Hello and welcome back to the Archive podcast. My name is Noah.
And my name is Gavin.
And we're the Blanchard Brothers, back with your first 2x2 retro review of 2022.
Right.
This is season 3 of 2x2 retro reviews. Everyone's favorite Archive series. Definitely not Bending Not Breaking.
Yeah.
The show that,
What's that?
has. I know you don't know what it is.
Something about M. Night Shyamalan's Airbender thing?
Nailed it.
That's what it's about?
Yeah. They cover the movie minute by minute. It's one of those type shows.
It's a fucking deep dive.
Yeah.
Like the old ones Cthulhu deep dive.
I mean, they've been doing it for, they just finished season 5.
Wow.
So
they're 50 minutes into the movie. How long is that movie? An hour and a half?
I think it's about 2:10.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So they got plenty of time.
I don't know. Never finished it. Okay. But yeah, this is everybody. This is the consensus crowd favorite.
Oh, okay.
I say that based on absolutely nothing, but these are some of the most listened to episodes of the show.
Yeah.
A lot of people that check in and are like, "Oh, I wanted to hear about this movie," and clearly are like, "Oh, these guys are all right."
Yeah.
I'll pass on everything else. But yeah, we have the occasional weird spike. One of these days, we'll go through and talk about the most successful of the 2x2 retro reviews. Because I think some of them might surprise you if we looked at the numbers.
Weren't we like the most successful when we looked at Mute? Like
yes,
the
that was
second,
that was one. Well, what that led me to is like if you talk about any Netflix movie, good or bad, but you talk about it within the first weekend that it's out, you're gonna get some downloads.
Yeah.
So we could chase that.
We could pander.
Or we could continue to do what we do,
Yeah.
which is talk about movies that are at least 10 years old and try and vaguely connect them together and force each other to watch stuff. In this case, movies that we had both seen.
Yes.
Multiple times, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But we got a 10-year anniversary and we have a 20-year anniversary.
Yeah. Crazy.
I didn't check the release dates on these, but they're coming up. They're within this calendar year.
Everybody's already been talking. Like, there's been a bunch of retrospectives on one of them. I was reading a few while I was waiting on you today.
I think one of the ones we're going to discuss is one you'll definitely hear more about, it being its 10-year. The one that's 20 years old, I feel like has kind of faded from memory. And we'll talk about whether that's a good, bad thing or, whether it just kind of makes sense. I don't know which one you want to tackle first, but we are talking about Narc. That would be my pick. From 2002.
Not to be confused with Narc, the musician.
Yes.
Right.
Lest we forget.
Mm-hmm.
A little subtle difference in the spelling there.
Yes.
And your pick from
Looper.
2012. Yes, Looper. Rian Johnson's Looper.
With Jordan Gordon-Lewis.
Jordan
Gordon-Lewis.
Gordon.
I think it's something from a Bill Hader sketch or something. I don't know why that name just pops in my head when I think of GGL.
Jordan Jeffrey Lewis.
Thinks he invented aluminum foil.
Mr. Joe Fusco Jr. He also claims he invented aluminum foil. He's delusional. Top 5 rom-coms.
Oh, yeah.
Faux show.
Just a fucking classic.
Oh, maybe Christmas time. Maybe it's time to discuss While You Were
Christmas
Sleeping.
movie.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
We had to watch that at
Sandy,
Media
man.
Arts.
Loved it.
At USC Sumter. That was like our definition of what a rom-com was. It hit all the marks, all the tropes, all the stuff. I was like, okay, this Media Arts teacher might know what he's talking about. So,
Word.
yeah, Looper. One of probably. I mean, I'm going to put it up top. One of the best time travel sci-fi movies in recent memory. Can you think of a better one? I'll wait.
I mean, I'm inclined to say one of the best of all time, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was going to be my main question is name me a better original sci-fi film from the last 10 years that's not Benson and Moorhead joint. What do you call them? Benson and Hedges? What do you
Woodward
call
and Bernstein.
Woodward and Bernstein. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Their new one's coming out later this year.
What?
Yeah, In the Dirt, I think. No, that was In the Earth, excuse me, is the Ben Wheatley movie. I think it's either called In the Dirt or Something in the Dirt.
You know what?
Something like that. Now I want to look it up.
If you're going to exclude Woolbert and Bernstein from the conversation,
there
isn't.
They're also directing most of, if not all, of Moon Knight.
Oh, good.
Very excited.
Can't wait for that shit. Yeah, if you excuse both of those two because they've just done fucking amazing work with the subject. I can't think of another one, but yeah, Synchronic would be another one that's like, this is perfect. Like it perfectly explains the rules of time travel.
Something in the Dirt.
Huh.
Okay. When neighbors John and Levi witness supernatural events in their Los Angeles apartment building, they realize documenting the paranormal could inject some fame and fortune into their wasted lives. An even deeper, darker rabbit hole their friendship frays as they uncover the dangers of the phenomena, the city, and each other. And it's starring them again.
Oh, good.
So back to the endless
good
vibe. And apparently they shot it during quarantine.
Oh,
so it's
dude, I cannot fucking
chamber piece.
Because you know what, Noah? It's really nice that I know that one's coming out, and it's going to be something I can watch in a few months or weeks or however long, because I'm still fucking waiting on Chuck Hank and the San Diego Twins. Still waiting. Almost 10 years. Are we closer to 10 years? Gotta be, right?
Oh my gosh, when was Bellflower? Bellflower was 2011, is that right? I think we already missed we should have done a big retrospective last year, but
yeah.
I was, we were still sour grapes because we're waiting on that other one.
Could you show me footage of them with it on a fucking
I mean, I was back on
screen.
the Patreon. It seemed like it was right. It seemed like it was happening. And now, radio silence.
Yeah.
Not the makers of the most recent Scream. Just radio silence, disambiguous, however they would say on Wikipedia.
Gotcha.
Which one are we talking about first? Yeah. I feel like
I
have plenty to say about both of these in my rewatches, but I'm game for whichever. I don't know. Do we lead with the more seen, the more popular?
I think we talk about Narc first.
I think we do too. So
further
check
removed.
The show notes. You can skip ahead if you have no interest in this movie, which is totally fair. If that's the case. I kind of picked it on a whim because I had been wanting to rewatch it.
Right.
And so this was my excuse to make you do it and me to rewatch it as well.
Yeah.
I think my instinct with this one was honestly a curiosity of just how it would hold up in general, given current, the current landscape of things in regards to police. Also, just I wanted to look at this. In my head, this was a Paramount Vantage movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just straight up Paramount for distribution, and it's a Cruz Wagner production.
Yeah.
So this was like a mini indie, sort of, where it wasn't a huge budget, but it was a studio thing.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously,
28 days to shoot.
Obviously, the script got some traction.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to bring this up because we never really talked about Carnahan with any kind of depth, but a guy that I feel like we were both big fans of, and in Ringer nomenclature, we bought a lot of stock in.
Oh yeah.
Initially, that maybe never quite ever paid off.
Yeah, I could see that.
Arguable.
He's one of those where if what he was involved with and what he was mentioned as he's going to do X, Y, and Z, if any one of those happened, I feel like boom, he's up there with look at this guy. I for one will always ride or die for the A-Team remake. You know that.
Huge fan as well. Yes.
But some of this Cruz Wagner, they asked him, hey, why don't you come work on Mission Impossible 3, and he had to leave set, and then it becomes a JJ movie, right?
Yeah.
So
and I'm not super well versed in all of these, but I think he's been one of those people who had a lot of this is about to happen, this is my next project, and then it fell through. I think he's been branded as kind of hard to work with, a little bit of a hard ass. He feels like from the vibe of this movie, and this is his first feature, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Is there one that predates this?
Blood something in Octane, Blood Guts Bullets and Octane, I believe. He's in it. It's one he made, shot, and directed. But that's what gets him noticed for this. And then this is.
I got to be honest. I didn't really go back and do any research. I'm just going off of my memory of the time. You were 100% correct. Blood, Guts, Bullets, and Octane from 1998. Nobody we know, but yeah, you said it's like self-financed. He's in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested in checking that out at some point. But this is his first like proper studio feature,
Right.
And I think you can see why this got greenlit on the level that it did and what they're kind of chasing.
Right.
Because a year prior to this, we have a pretty big movie that I feel like this movie is kind of exists in the shadow of, even though they're quite different.
Right.
But a little movie called Training Day, which we've never like full on discussed. But so you can see, okay, gritty, dirty cop movie, slightly elevated, like it's got a little bit of like prestige to it.
Yeah.
We got this like monster supporting role for like a maybe veteran actor to come in and kind of crush.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe could be an Oscar opportunity for them. That didn't quite happen.
Yeah.
I do want to look at the field. I didn't do this in advance, but I do remember at the time he was one of those cusp, like maybe he could get a nomination.
Because this is when's Copland, 99?
I believe Copland is 98 or 99.
Yeah, so that's the last big thing Liotta was in before this, right?
Which he's fantastic in, but again, that's an ensemble where,
yeah,
I mean, everybody kind of pops.
Right.
But everybody's amazing in it.
Right.
And there's so many awesome people
mm-hmm.
that it almost kind of just, the only thing that actually rises above is the Stallone performance because it's so different than how you're used to seeing him.
Exactly.
And the fact that he's like holding his own for the most part with all these people.
Well, then just the fact that like when you look at Ray Liotta in Copland, he's pretty much Henry Hill all over again. He's not any major changes. And in this, he gained a lot of weight. He even wore like stuff underneath his big overcoats to make himself look big. He would also eat a lot of Chinese food before takes to get that like water retention in his face to just look like he just had all this rage and shit going on with him, which I think works.
I was going to say, that's my favorite form of method. Give me a bunch of Chinese food.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're
we should maybe backtrack for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Sorry, because I don't even think we set it up. If you didn't watch the movie, if you're just following along, it's a dirty cop / mystery thriller crime drama.
Do you want to label it neo-noir, maybe? Possibly, a little bit?
I mean, it does have the true, like, detective element to it, which I like. It is one of those where it's kind of like a clean ribbon on the end. We'll talk about the structure of this, too, which I think is actually kind of fascinating. But, and we don't have to go through too much beat by beat. But the basic plot, a disgraced cop who's had an incident on the job, who was an undercover narc, played by the incomparable Jason Patric, one of our shared favorite dudes that I don't know that we've gotten a chance to like really delve in and talk about. And you want to talk about overshadowing? I feel like he is incredible in this movie, and he should have been the thing that people like came out of this going like, shit, we got to put Patrick in more stuff, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like we got to do this. And instead, all the energy is kind of behind Liotta, and then it kind of fizzles out. It never materializes into like what they thought it was going to be for him. Is kind of the vibe. Anyways, Jason Patric's character begrudgingly takes on a kind of semi-cold case of a murdered cop, another undercover cop, who's been dead for around 60 days, and they have no leads, no hard evidence, and they basically are like, you can come back onto the force if you get, if you solve this case. By the way,
conviction. Yes.
In the process, he brings in the former, they're not partners, but just former friend, colleague of the slain officer, played by Ray Liotta. It's Oak, right?
Oak, yeah. Henry Oak.
Deputy Oak. Detective Oak, excuse me. And they go on an odyssey into the underworld to try, the drug scene, to try and figure out what happened to this guy, and the answers lead them in some interesting places and some morally questionable gray areas. Okay, that's your basic plot outline. So, back to what you were saying, or do you want to talk about the opening of this movie, which I remember it as being pretty notorious, and I prepared myself for once again, and it did not. It has not lost any of its luster to me personally.
No, that still holds up.
It is one of the most visceral first 5 minutes of a movie I've ever seen.
I put it up there with another one close to this time, which is the opening of Assault on Precinct 13, the remake.
Which I feel like is very much aping the energy
right,
of this.
Yeah, it's trying
actually.
It's still a little muted compared to how wild this opening is, but it definitely has that vibe of like somebody watched that and was like, we got to do this in our opener. He's got to be undercover. He's got to be chasing after somebody crazy, and people got to get shot in the process and like fucked up. So yeah.
So wild. Yeah, you have again one of the most visceral. This to me is like, and you can see him doing like speed ramping in it, but it's not overdone to me in this. And this movie does have a lot of that very like late 90s, early 2000s quick cutty. Yeah. You could put it in the like it's kind of Fincher done poorly,
right?
If you will, because he doesn't really do that, but it's that vibe. It's that like music videoification sort of thing. And then you, of course, begin to associate that more with like Saw and the torture porn genre, that right. style of editing. But it's a little bit here, and it is a symptom of just the 2000s. But I feel like in its vibe, he's kind of establishing part of this style at the time.
A little bit, yeah.
To me. And I remember it feeling very singular watching it the first time. That like, oh, this, Training Day has a look to it, but this has a very different look. Mm-hmm. It's very like muted, very saturated colors, like
much like LA has a look to it, and so does Detroit.
Sure, and I think it obviously I've never been to Detroit, and again, you could go on and on about its depictions in cinema in general, which are all pretty terrible.
Always gets a bad rap.
Yes, and again, from what I've also been led to believe, that's like, it's kind of like a couple square blocks that like every movie seems to focus on, where it's like, this is like the dregs of society.
Mm-hmm. It's either whether you're up or down, north or south of 8 Mile, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think, but again, having never been there, right. I think it nails the vibe, the feel of the cold, mm-hmm. like all of that through. Again, it's simple stuff like blue color filters, but you're seeing the breath. It's obviously shot on location, from what mm-hmm. I know, and yeah, it nails a mood and a visceral vibe. And this movie moves at a pretty decent clip. I looked at it and it's like, oh, it's 145. It's a hard 140, like on the dot, with 5 minutes of credits, which I was actually surprised by. But it moves you through this case. It's got the like, okay, people have been watching Law and Order
right.
on TV for fucking ever, but they've never heard this level of language, and it gets back more to, I feel like it's the biggest thing that this is trying to ape and be the modern version of is French Connection.
Yeah.
Clearly, to me. It wants to have that verisimilitude of like, we're on the ground with these guys. It feels like lived in and like well researched, all of that. And again, that's what I was kind of echoing. That opening chase scene to me is like, okay, I want to give you the souped up, modern, visceral version of when they're chasing down the Santa Claus there's the chase in the opening of French Connection,
right?
Which at the time was like, oh my god, this foot chase like feels like nothing else. And then you have, I'm thinking of other like great foot chases in cinema, and like Point Break comes to mind.
Oh yeah,
and that one like has this like, speed and intensity to it, and like it has a whole story told within it. And this is like zipped up. It's when he is like moving and the camera's right behind him, like in the actual running sequences, I remember feeling like physically like this is a lot,
right? And
like, oh my god, if I had seen this in a theater, like that would have been too much probably.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, super intense. And then immediately kind of sets the tone of like, okay, boom, the first person we see who gets stabbed with the needles or whatever, it's not like, oh, there's a little bit of blood and like, boom, that person's dead. Oh my god, sad. It's like, no, they're gurgling. Like this feels like you're watching somebody die on camera This is like extremely visceral. And then, so we've seen what that dude is capable of. We don't know the context of anything. We just are seeing Jason Patric's character remembering this. We do get that opening shot of him, and he seems to be recalling this. Anyways, this crazed junkie snatches up now a kid, a small infant, off of a playground. And, like, without hesitating, Jason Patric is boom, boom, boom.
On the run. Not even, like, squared up, checking to see if anybody's in his line of sight. It's just, like, shooting him on the run one-handed. Like, crazy.
Takes him out, manages to avoid the daughter. You're like, oh, my God, thank Christ that's over. And then you realize that the mother of that daughter, who is also pregnant, has been wounded in the leg by him. And again, that is like one of the most intense openings ever. They immediately take you into a scene where they're like, so the baby didn't make it. This is 18 months later.
Right.
It's like, so the baby didn't make it. And we hear you've had contact with the mom, blah, 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 all this different stuff. But so the mom survived. The baby did not. Ruled a bad shooting or whatever. They loop him into coming back in, but we're also getting intercut like, oh, in these intervening 18 months he has now had a kid,
right?
And yeah, just like processing all that at the time, I forgot. I was like, this movie gets right into it. Like, it is.
I remember
very
the showering with his own child. That was in the trailer. I remember a trailer with that and being like, this movie's intense. There's like a baby in a shower with this dude. Like, people don't shower with their children. They wash their children.
Something you don't see that often. Even stuff like the baby sleeping in the bed with them,
right? As
opposed to like in a crib and stuff. Just just little.
That's how they do in Detroit, baby.
Little touches that I think add to it's trying to go for this naturalism, which I think is going to be interesting when I bring up a couple points. So I don't want to go point by point, essentially, other than the incredible Chi McBride, who I'm always happy to see, is the kind of overall detective who loops him back into this and is like, hey, you want a desk job? I also love that. It's like,
he ain't about the action no more.
That's what I'm saying. You very rarely see the guy who's like, oh, I'm coming back for one last job because that's the only way I'm going to get the boring ass desk job. Like, that's what I'm craving. I guess you kind of like Murtaugh, I guess, a little bit in the Lethal Weapons. He's always like about to retire, but this is like, he's not trying to get out of it. He literally just like, I got a kid, I got new family, essentially, I got to provide for the kid, so I just want a boring desk job. I don't want to be out in the field. I don't want to be doing deep cover. No. And so, okay, this is what I got to do. All right. He starts looking at everything. And he's like, I keep seeing this dude's name, Henry Oak. And so he goes to McBride, and he's basically like, so he's not allowed to work this case. And he's like, okay, well, he did like all this research, and like he seems to really know a lot of it, so it seems like, you should just bring him back in. Like, maybe that's your answer there.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, he's got a great conviction rate.
93%.
He's great. But he's everything a cop's not supposed to be these days.
And I'm just, the line of it's only a matter of time before IAB comes down on him. I'm like, okay, I know exactly who this dude is.
Exactly. And it's intercut with a Ray Liotta putting a pool ball in a sock to beat a giant man who apparently was abusing his wife.
And kid.
Yes. And just like beats him senseless while he's handcuffed. And it's just like, we set the precedent of like, okay, yeah, you think you've seen Dirty Cops? We're going to like...
Right.
Yeah. We're putting it on Front Street with this guy. So that's how we're introduced to him. He talks him into bringing it back on, but it's like, but you got to take on this case. You guys got to be listed as partners. Otherwise, it's a no-go.
Yeah, it's not going to fly.
And yeah. So that's where we have the stakes laid out.
From the beginning, Liotta is like suspect. He's like, you're IAB. Like, IAB talk to you. They're coming. He's like, no. He's like, fuck you. You telling me for real.
I just got to say, okay, so they do the, like, seems like a classic scene, a tropey scene at this point of the shooting range.
Yes.
And like, there's only one other guy there, and he's shooting, dead bullseyes the whole time.
Right.
But when Ray Liotta leans, it's really the first time we had that introduction scene, but it's kind of like, here's a side cut to it or whatever. But when he like just slides back from the partition and is like, we should get a drink, or like,
You get a coffee.
yeah, we need to get a coffee. The look in his eye is such that I feel like Jason Patric should just be like, yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go be a janitor somewhere. Like
Right.
I no, I should not go down this road.
Not
like,
at all.
He has this like one of the most intense like gleams in his eye I've ever fucking seen from an actor. Where I'm just like, oh shit, this guy's been through the ringer. Speaking of been through the ringer, Jason Patric is one of the most haunted looking individuals I've ever seen.
Yes.
He is like
Constantly looks like his world has just been ripped from inside of him at
looks,
any time.
He looks like Rust Cole and Ray Velcoro put through a blender. Like,
Right.
put through an even worse life than the two of those gentlemen have.
Right. In every movie, not just this movie.
But,
Did you see Rush? Did you watch Rush?
Of course I've seen Rush.
I like to think
Rush is one that's a Sycamore movie, though. I have not seen Rush in like 15 years.
Bro, Rush is like, it's weird that it's like how similar they are. It's completely different.
you
and
could
it's so tame. We should have probably paired these two and called it St. Patty's Day for March. But you know what? We missed the boat again.
Day late and a fucking dollar short.
Yeah.
You know what?
You know what? In hindsight, we were great at it. We are not punctual about getting to shit when we should, but goddamn it, we think about how great it would have been. So if you want that podcast, we'll definitely go back and compare Rush to this. We'll call it St. Patty's Day, and maybe we can throw in like Speed
Dude,
2.
why don't we just do a whole month of Patrick?
Yeah,
Dude, we could do Your Friends and Neighbors, the Losers, Lost Boys, obviously,
Speed 2, Cruise Control.
of course. Downloading Nancy,
Yeah,
with
right.
him and Maria Bello.
Yeah,
You want to talk about a dark movie with him playing a haunted individual?
yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. So again, we don't have to go beat by beat. But what did you make of it going back? How long has it been? You know.
Oh god, it's been at least like 7-8 years since I watched it, and I mean, I remember it being one of those where it's like when I get to the payoff, I'm like, like I wanted it to be more.
Okay, so here's
But going back to it this time, I'm like, okay, I understand now.
Here's my thing with the payoff. It had been long enough since I'd seen it, that I knew, I was like, I know Ray Liotta's involved. Mm-hmm. But I was like, and I remember like, oh yeah, Ray Liotta killed him. But then I'm sitting there the whole time and I'm like, but why this big cover up in there? I was like, but why does he have to do all of that if he's the one who killed him? So I had forgotten about the final reveal.
Right.
So that actually played for me in the moment. And I was like, oh yeah. And honestly, I don't know if I remembered this, but the fact that it all connects and ties back into
The one story he told in the
Jason.
car.
Well, no, I was just saying
yeah,
the whole Jason Patric character and like his whole motivation for taking on this case and the point he was at where he started is all like a kind of like a perfect loop. And that would be a great segue, but we're not quite done yet. But I started thinking, I was like, oh, this is kind of it is kind of noirish or Swiss watchy, where it's like, oh, we get to the end and like it was
worked.
all connected.
It worked.
Literally
Everything
all of it
matters,
was.
yeah.
And I did not remember that being a thing.
I didn't remember that part. I remembered that. I didn't remember the daughter part, or like the girlfriend part, the wife part. That the wife was the little girl Ray Liotta saved.
Oh, as soon as he told that story, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's not about him. It's about the daughter and like,
right.
or not the, the surrogate daughter, essentially the daughter he was never able to have because he lost the wife to cancer. That's the thing. I feel bad for Liotta because obviously the things that get the attention are things that people have seen him do,
right.
which are the big, intense, screamy moments, which he totally nails throughout this movie. But the movie smartly, and I feel like this is why he would look at it and be like, this is pretty juicy, does give him that scene you're talking about. That car scene where they're on the stakeout and he tells the story about basically some of the darkest shit he's seen. Now, this is where I want to ask you. That story he tells, which is basically, I found this girl and her father had been pimping her out for rent money.
Right.
That comes on the heels of a section where we have like kind of an old school split screen. Again, feels very 70s. It's trying to, to me, that's the feel of this movie. As much as it has those quick cutty things, it feels like it's trying to modernize that style. Like, okay, well, what would that be now? We're not gonna ape the 70s style or the look of it with like grain or long dolly shots or anything like that. We're going to update that, but keep the feel of it, the mentality of it, the leanness, if you will. So all of that still really played for me, but we get that sequence. They're asking, and I'm sure a lot of those. I think I remember this from the commentary, which I watched at some point.
None of them were real actors. That's why nobody knew.
They're all on the street, and they're just asking about this random guy. And some people like, oh yeah, I kind of know him, or like, we'll continue on with it. But all of that is essentially improv.
Yeah,
and all just like stolen shots, I'm guessing. So,
but it's interesting that montage and like its different palettes, it all basically winds them to like get to this point where they're like, oh, we can go. Like they both convene on a name and they both convene on, and it just does get back to that. Like that's what you see it sometimes in like Law and Order episodes, but that's what police work is. It's going out, it's asking questions. Well, that's what I was going to say. Finding something and moving along as you find more clues.
I love that this montage gets all of that done without, like, we still get to have our normal detective beats of go location to location.
Right.
One breadcrumb leads you to the next. But we do get this initial thrust of like, okay, we're going to do a lot of that stuff, but it's got a different flavor to it. And again, because it is this like man on the street vibe, like just non-actors, it has, that real world, like more visceral feel to it. Now we come out of that into a scene with our old buddy, Jose Hierro.
Oh, yeah.
Cochi Loco.
Oh, my God.
The crazy pig. Mr. John Ortiz himself.
Yes.
This is probably the first time he, like, popped for me, but I know he was doing stuff before this.
Possibly.
A legend. In I believe, the Chicago theater scene. I think he's a big Chicago guy. Hence the Michael Mann connection. But, yeah, one of our favorites around here. Always like when he shows up. And this is the epitome of, like, you want to talk about a calling card scene for a young actor of just like, he just gets to, like, steal this entire scene for 4 minutes from Ray Liotta and Jason Patric.
With his dick out.
Yeah, with his bare ass hanging out. And with, I don't think I registered I thought as a kid that she was mad at him and lit his pubic hair on fire.
Right.
That's what I thought had happened. I did not catch any of the dialogue where he explained, she's been out on the street fucking around on me.
Right.
And she comes back here and she gives me crabs, essentially. Or something worse, I'm assuming. Like, we're assuming gonorrhea, said it's all like black and blue? Like
gonorrhea, chlamydia, some kind of VD.
Who knows? Some kind of venereal disease, for sure. And so he lights her hair on fire.
Right.
And I never fully connected what was going on in this scene. And then the pure absurdity and dark comedy of, hey, let me get a hit, man. Like,
then I'll talk to you. Look, I know I'm fucked. I know I'm going away. And Ray Liotta's just like, okay.
All right. Like, are we really letting this happen? And Jason Patric, of course, who's used to this shit, is just like, if you let him smoke and he'll fucking talk. Like, yeah, we're good. That's the other dynamic. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but that's the other dynamic I love. Is it's not a buddy cop movie.
No,
it's an interesting partners movie, but it's not a buddy cop movie in the traditional sense at all. These guys, they don't. There's no scene where they go out and like have a bunch of beers together and like commiserate over some like normal bullshit. The
closest you get is the one we're talking about in the car, where he gives him the story of like, oh, that's the closest you get to them being like, oh, I get who you are and where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. And it's not until later when Jason Patric tells him, like, I ran the name, like, I think I know what's going on here. Tell me I'm wrong. Yeah. And even in that moment when he's laying all that out, you get the sense that, like, he's like, I get it. I understand you. We had the conversation. Even if we hadn't, even if this was just about keeping this cop's name in good graces and you had no other connection to it, I get it. But are we really going to do that right now? Are we really going to, is this what we're going to stake our claim on? You know?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Hold that thought for 2 seconds. I want to jump back, and then we can kind of just move into the ending, because I don't think we're really missing anything. I just wanted to ask you about this thread before we get too much further.
Okay.
So you have the John Ortiz scene, which again I think is entertaining and kind of like, again, it's darkly comedic, which you need a little bit of, I would argue, in here.
Yeah, a little of that Detroit humor.
I would say you do kind of need it, because otherwise it might become too oppressively gritty.
Yeah.
And then we have a scene shortly after this where they follow up the lead from there, and we find the dead guy in the bathtub.
Yeah.
And we get he must have been smoking weed and like broke his bong accidentally, decides to use the shotgun. We don't see like a graphic depiction of it. We hear it described, but like we cut away before we actually see that moment. Again, a moment that's played for laughs, for dark comedy.
Right.
Almost right on the back of that is when we get into that scene where he tells that very dark story about how he found this little girl and her being abused by her father. Okay. Mm-hmm. I just, for you, how did that play this time? Because I felt like these movies always have a little bit of that. But it was like we're taking all of this so seriously. We start out so grittily or whatever. That does it feel a little gross to like have to still be playing some of this for laughs? Or did it feel like it was a balance? Because again, you don't really get any levity anywhere else.
The balance in what I'm looking at is what, like, it's the baby in the shower of it all, if you want to call it that. Because it's like you see these things, and everything we've seen is the result of an adult person on drugs. And it's been kind of comical. Because, like, this bitch, you know, she burned me, and he's like, I fucking love you, baby. The end of that is heartbreaking. It's like, oh my God. It's a good woman. It's a good woman. Yeah, that. And then, like, you know, he's too lazy to get out of this warm bathtub. What's he going to do? All because there's no firing pin on the shotgun shell. It's like, oh, he must have forgotten there was one in there. Didn't realize it. Tokes up, takes a hit, blow, done. And because it's adults that are doing this to themselves, it's like, it kind of has a mirror of, like, we spent all this fucking money fighting the drug war. Like, what are we doing? Like, these people are trying to, like, who cares what they do? But then when you dial it back and say, yeah, but here's an unseen victim in that this guy pimped his daughter out for drug money, rent money, because he spent the rent money on drugs, whatever you want to do.
Right.
So it's that other human toll that's kind of unseen. And, like, you know, when you get to the fact and you realize what the ending's all about, which we'll go into, it makes complete sense why Liotta flips out when Patrick goes to just talk to the wife, the slain officer's wife. It makes complete sense. So juxtaposing those of like, yeah, you know, really serious, a cop's been killed, but, you know, look at what this is doing to this city, these people. You know, you're led to believe that if you left them alone long enough, they wound up being so dumb and fucked up on drugs, they would, you know, just all off themselves, or like they would take care of each other. But when you juxtapose that with that human conversation of like when I didn't pick up on it the first time I watched it. This is the first time I actually really paid attention to what he's saying when he's like, the day she died, I became a better cop. I had no fear. Mm-hmm. I went at it full bore. I didn't care because I wasn't worried about going home anymore. And so you juxtapose that with like, and then I found this little girl, and it kind of gave me some kind of humanity back because I saw what it did, and I took he makes every attempt to like make up for her having a raw deal in life. That's the only thing he thinks he can do. And that starts the weaving back into the ending of the true motivation behind everything. So I think it's nice to get that early on with the juxtaposition, because if you're not paying attention, which The first round through, I know I wasn't. Again, I wasn't really watching it to talk about it until this time. But having that thread sewn so smoothly at the beginning, when we get to the ending and Jason Patric starts explaining what he's been doing, you know, because we constantly have him going back looking at everything. He's looked over everything multiple times. That's kind of like his thing. It's just going through the reports, going through the evidence. He's kind of already pieced it together as to what really happened here. But it's not until we get to the ending that he finally has a chance to say, okay, now I can fully flesh all this out and we can get to the bottom of everything. I don't know what that's going to entail. I don't know what it's going to mean, but I'm finally able to do it now. So I don't know. I don't. To me, it was easy to put it in there amidst kind of the dark humor, because it does kind of ground it in like, yeah, it is funny that guy blew his face off and that, you know, this argument happened with these adults with, you know, John Ortiz and all that. But at the end of the day, there's still this like serious, like I said, unseen element of like victim of what drugs do to people that we may not always, you know, we may not always like focus on.
I like that read on it a lot, actually. Yeah. That was fantastic, dude. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah,
I have a degree in that stuff, so you know.
We can kind of we can move into the back half.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any huge things we're missing other than
they start finding all these different pieces of like police equipment at different places.
They find a badge at a place where Patrick is wounded, and Ray Liotta shoots a guy who they then the department wants to pin the murder of Calvis. I don't think we said Calvis. Michael Calvis. The movie definitely says Calvis about 1,000 fucking times. What was his, or Jimmy Franklin? What was his?
Jimmy Franks?
Now I can't remember. Yeah. But Michael Calvis, for some reason that name sticks with me. As soon as they said it in the movie, I was like, oh yeah, the Michael Calvis case. Yeah. Oh yeah, how could I forget? Yeah. Okay. So
they vehemently like, this guy could not have done this. Like, there's no way. Yes. He's not the guy.
So,
which I'm thinking, like, now you're like, why? We'll go back to that. Let's pin that scene until we get to the
put a pin in that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, basically, it all culminates, and this is where I was, the structure thing. I was like, all right, they're at the auto body shop. I was like, I think this movie ends here.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't think we
leave.
I said, I don't think we come away from here at all. I don't remember.
Not physically.
Yeah, I was like, I don't remember a coda on the end of this or anything. I was like, I think we're here for the duration of this. And it was about 40 minutes left.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, it all goes down here. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, they're about to go in. There's kind of a brief shootout. They find Busta, and I cannot remember the other actor. I don't know that it was anybody we would
probably
like,
not.
No. This movie continues the grand tradition of featuring a rapper turned actor and playing his music in the scene before you reveal him. I would love to get a list of all of those movies. Always funny when it happens.
You'll play my track. That's the name of the episode when we discuss that.
Absolutely. But yeah, basically we realize in this scene, Liotta is trying to pin it on these two guys who were there on the day of the murder. Tries to plant evidence, tries to get them to confess, and Patrick could see that like things are escalating. He also, prior to this, finally got some declassified documents that he had been waiting on.
Right.
He starts to look at them, doesn't get too deep in, and we're like, is he piecing something together? We don't know. And again, by this point, you're clearly like, okay, Ray Liotta definitely. There's been so many things that you're like, okay, he's trying to like steer the narrative in this one direction. Anytime anybody talks about him being a junkie or like not being a good dude, he like flips out on him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was the case? What was going on here? And then when he gets pissed when Patrick like interviews the wife, you're also a little bit like, okay, is there a weird dynamic with him and the wife? And like maybe he was trying to off the husband because things were complicated, you know. Anyways, we get the grand reveal that, am I missing anything?
No, you're spot on. And they basically, they're at a point where Ray Liotta is basically like, I'm gonna go. He's basically got him to like go outside, get the kit. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna frame them. We're gonna make this stick. We got to do it by the book. Go out to the car, get the kit, and come back. And the minute he's gone, he locks the door on him, and he goes back to him. He's like, "You guys need to listen. You need to fucking listen to me right now. Beforehand, you said you know who killed him. Why?" And he gets told, because your boy Oak was there. Like, he saw this go down. You know, why? Because your boy Calvis was a fucking junkie. He'd been under too long. He got hooked on the shit. So he started bringing us guns. He started bringing us police IDs. How the fuck do you think he knew? How the fuck do you think you know that Dowd knew you were a cop? Fucking Calvis gave you up. He gave up everybody who was a known cop. Fucking all of us knew he was undercover. Yeah. But we all still sold to him. And
this guy you've been trying to avenge,
right?
Because you think it's gonna bring,
the desk job you want.
Not only that, but you think it's gonna be some virtuous act of like, oh, I redeemed this guy who was slain, who could have been me. He brings that up to his wife multiple times. Like, right. What if it was me? I'm going to bring all of this to justice. I'm going to make it right. I'm going to like salvage something out of all of this. And to realize that like, no, the dude you've been trying to save along, figure out the murderer of and save the image of
is the reason you're in the spot you're in right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that moment when it escalates to he has to put Liotta down, because Liotta is literally about to shoot Busta in the face after he breaks back in and all of that.
Well, no, because he goes out to the car and he confronts him about it right out there. He's
like,
tell me
I'm
wrong.
And he beats the.
Tell me this doesn't happen. And they basically they fight. He says, I'm going back in there. I'm getting this all on tape and I'm ending this.
Yeah.
And of course, it's game time and he winds up having to shoot him. And in his dying breaths, he basically explains to us that, yeah, he was there. That yeah, the guy did get shot, because they show you the shoulder injury he's got. Said, Calvis was there. He shot at him. And then Liotta confronted him and was like, I'd heard about this. I didn't want to believe it. Blah, 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 blah. Why the fuck you doing this? But we're also told before all this that the main reason is that the little girl that he saved wound up dating and marrying Calvis, this cop.
Yeah.
So it was never really about him. It was about her, because if he dies in the line of duty, he gets full pension and his wife and surviving children are set. And if it's ever discovered what really happened, which we find out is that, basically confronted with like, fuck, I'm a junkie, it's all over for me. Instead of trying to work with, Liotta, getting detoxed and getting out of it, he just is like, fuck it, I'm just going to kill myself. Because for a while there, you're thinking, like we thought, oh yeah, Liotta is the one who put him down. He had to, but
right,
but the shot, and then like him going and like reacting to that in the flashback, and you don't see his body. Like, it's just that the frame holds, and it's just Ray Liotta reacting to all that. And then of course we pull back and it's like he's giving you this confession, but it does what I love. Probably the thing I love the most about the movie is gives you this confession. It shows you that, Buster and his partner, they run out into the street. They get stopped by the police. And basically he's left with minutes to decide, well, what do I do? Do I go through with this and say, it was these two, we were questioning them? Because no cop is going to believe these two guys. They got evidence. They got all this stuff. All he has to do is say, yeah, we found the gun in here. We were going outside to process the scene. They got loose. They shot him. He got my gun. They shot my partner. It's these two. They're going up there and they'll go away for it, But the movie ends with us wondering, he's got seconds to figure out what he's going to do. And we don't know what he does. Mm-hmm. And we're just left with like, what do we do? I don't know if that falls
very 70s.
Yes, very 70s. I don't know if that falls flat for some people, but that's one of the reasons I thought it did, to me at least, still held up, was because it's like boom.
So I vaguely remember, I was like, I know Liotta's character throws around the N-bomb a couple times in this prior. I was like, that's kind of an element of the character. I was like, I remember we also end this with, two, African American characters being like strapped to a table and basically about to be framed for something that they didn't do. I was like, I remember all of this. I was like, I don't quite remember how it shakes out, and I don't remember if the representation of all of that is like meant to be as textured as it is or not. And going back to it, I was like, no, it 100% is. And even though it's kind of a wink and you wish it was a little bit more about that, it's still there in the performance, specifically at Busta Rhymes. But he's like, no, you guys just want to stick it to us because, you know, if you stick it to a couple of black guys, it's gonna get stuck. And to me, the movie also, it doesn't need to give you that shot of the two of them getting out to the police, and they're tied up and everything. The implication to me being there that it's like, it looks like something like bad was going on, like they were being tortured or whatever.
Right. So
they at least have that on their side of it. But there's a closing shot of Busta Rhymes, and the pain in his face of like being, to me, you didn't need, like, the movie did not need to include that shot if it didn't want to, like, hey, we are kind of trying to say something about here about like, hey, it is pretty fucked up that in an effort to protect their own, like, we will just blame this shit on the black people of Detroit. Like, that's
when
yes.
the fucking case is closed.
Exactly.
Why Ray? That's the only problem I have with the movie. Why Ray Liotta do you not go along with? This dude did it. He killed Calvis, and the investigation is done. Your surrogate daughter is still going to get all the fucking benefits. You got a lowlife off the street. And if you really are paying attention now, you'll say, but guys,
I think
Ray Liotta blamed the two of them for making him a junkie. That's why he has to put them down.
Well,
for this.
no, I don't even think it's so much that. I think
he does. He says it flat out. Like they got him high. They hooked him on drugs.
But I think he's also trying to close the loop, because bottom line, those guys were there.
Right.
They saw him. They knew they were. Now, Grant, like you said, what cop's going to believe them?
Right.
And what circumstances are they ever going to like come in and say that? But I do think it's also the reason he needs it to lead all the way back up this chain to those guys is because that's where he wants it to be them. That's the closed loop. These guys who got him hooked, they're the ones who did him in.
Right.
It's them specifically.
Right.
And he's like, this guy is too small a fish, essentially. One last thing I want to say before we wrap up. Again, I think Liotta is pretty top notch. I think this is one of his best performances, period, in his career. Obviously, Goodfellas is going to probably be the topper forever. We're also big fans of Killing Them Softly. He's great in there.
What about Smoking Aces?
Smoking Aces, which is Carnahan's follow-up, which I think leans into the comedic touches that you see present in the John Ortiz scene, for instance. That kind of like dark, grimy, but like we're having fun here. I think Smoking Aces is that writ large, and then that carries you into like, if we mute this down a little bit, make it a little more palatable, we got the A-Team. Because that's kind of the tone of the A-Team, is a little bit of like fuck you, but like it's kind of nice about it. You know what I'm saying? I never saw The Gray.
Really good.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I know people are big fans of that.
No, I'm seeing like I put The Gray over any of the Taken movies. It's so fucking good.
Okay.
Like
what? And
I don't know if he's done a lot recently. If he's got something on the, I think he
didn't he just
got into
do
Blacklist? Like he was an executive producer on the Blacklist. He's directed a few episodes of it.
Yes. Boss Level, the Gibson Frank Grillo, that was him. Yeah. Which I should have. Excuse me.
Boss Level is great. No, watch that.
Huge mistake on my part, and this is why I wanted to see it in the first place. Did you see this shit?
What?
Cop Shop. He did Cop Shop.
Oh no, I need to watch it.
I was excited to see Cop Shop just based on the trailer, and I had no idea it was a Carnahan.
That was on my year-end list to get to. I circled it, but I didn't. I never went back and watched it.
I feel like we may have to give that one a spin and talk about it soon. Is that streaming somewhere yet?
I might be.
I'm seeing here rentable on Prime. I still got a gift card. Maybe we'll do that. All right, yeah. Maybe we'll check in with the modern Carnahan. The last thing I wanted to say, we don't have to like go through the whole career retrospective and everything, but there's a handful of guys who I wish we could just, I don't know where I would sub them in or like what project I would change or whatever, but Jason Patric, I mean, he's the son of maybe the most underrated actor in the history of movies, in my opinion. Jason Miller from The Exorcist that is still one of the most brilliant top to bottom performances, like one of my 10 favorite performances by an actor of all time, probably, in that movie. I think he's incredible.
And his granddad's Jackie Gleason.
Yes, and who's his mom?
I don't know. Just some lady, I guess. You know, Hollywood.
What an asshole. Okay. But I've always loved him. I've always dug his vibe. I realize he doesn't work in everything, but I feel like he has way more range than people give him credit for. The thing I want to point out in this movie that I loved going back to it, that I noticed more than anything, here's how dialed in I think he is. The modulation of the performances, given the context that the character is in.
Right.
Nick Tellis?
Tellis, yeah.
Tellis. He is, you see the levels of performance because this is a guy who's been in deep cover, who's been in these high stakes situations where you got to put on a character and everything. But you see the difference in performance between the way he is with his wife at home when they're in good spirits versus when they're kind of at odds with each other over the intensity of all of this.
When he's got to be bureaucratic with higher authorities.
Yeah, you see how he is flippantly with that board, but then you see the way he talks to Chi McBride, who he seems to at least somewhat respect, even begrudgingly.
Yeah.
You see the way he interacts with dogs, and then you see the way he can totally modulate when he goes into having to deal with people in the streets, with his fellow drug dealers and drug users, etc. And you just constantly see him modulating, giving the situation. When they go in to like roll rough on the dude who ends up winging him in like the back of the neck, and like Liotta has to put down the one they try and frame. He's
giving all the shit. He's like, one thing you didn't know.
He's the bad cop. Like Liotta doesn't say a thing in that scene, and Jason Patric just comes in and just like lays it fucking down, like, you know, lays down the law. But it's a completely different vibe than the way he approached John Ortiz's character. And you see, that's what I'm saying, is you see he's playing very much the same character. It's not like the performance is all over the place.
He's a narc.
Exactly. I'm saying just the levels of modulation to the performance given who he's talking to is so subtle but specific at the same time. I think it's just, yet again, it's one of those performances that's so good you don't notice how good it is.
And I think it's
just
that's what's
doing
missing
its
from
job.
Rush. Because I don't think whoever directed it gave him the ability to move throughout that. Because he kind of has one tone throughout that entire movie.
That's
and
my
it's like,
memory.
I look like Lindsey Buckingham and I do drugs. I'm an undercover police officer. Fucking Sam Elliott's in that movie.
Jennifer Jason Leigh plays more of the.
She gets the up and
she's the weight of it. Yes. And yeah, it's more the tragedy of like her like falling for it. I remember
bits and pieces.
Exactly. And I remember getting to Rush and being like, this is his movie, right? This is the one that like should have made him pop. This is the one everybody talks about. Because like when I was like, oh, he's one of my dudes, that was the one to go to, essentially. And I remember watching it and feeling the exact same way you did, which was like, I mean, I liked him in it because, I mean, he's Jason Patric. I liked it, but like, yeah. And I feel like it probably, in retrospect, I didn't have as much of an eye or a nose for this at the time, but like, it was more the style of the movie and the direction around it, not his performance.
He is Jack Travis in Speed?
What do you mean?
Like, what if he is like, he's Keanu's character?
Oh, first go round?
And then they move it into like, now they're on vacation together. You know, it's a couple months after they've met or whatever. They've been dating for 6 months. Let's go on vacation. Oh, you told me you were done with this high stakes stuff, Jack. Like you're gonna take a desk job, and then it's like, oh, now I got to deal with this guy on this boat for you, like kind of thing. Do you think it would be too much of them pushing like a John McClane kind of Die Hard thing, where like he's always in the wrong place, wrong time, or would it be moving more towards like, oh, is Jack Travis like a book series we don't know about? Because I feel like if you put him in Speed, the first one, would just be as...
Okay, well, that was the intention, of course, is that it should have been Jack in the second one.
Right.
Keanu wasn't available, so they had to do this whole weird rewrite. And then you get... I think about Jason Patric in that scenario where it's like, oh, well, it's Speed 2, and like the first movie was so huge, like, it's a great opportunity, but it's like, it's like the kind of the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like the Marvin Shores scene where it's like, well, yeah, but everybody else just sees you as like Bobo Keanu Reeves now.
Right.
And like, do you want to be Bobo to somebody who people at the time were still like, he's kind of, yeah. You know what I'm saying? Even after Speed,
no one in the 90s thought Keanu was Keanu.
That's
until
what I'm saying. Speed was a hit because of the concept and because of Sandra Bullock.
Right.
Being like this breakout performance in it. And like Keanu was kind of a byproduct of like, oh, he kind of holds his own. And like
the Bill and Ted kid?
People who knew were like, I feel like in the moment were like, Point Break is a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah.
But that was a very small minority compared to the amount of people now who are like, no, it is one of the 10 greatest action films ever made, and it is an absolute classic of the genre.
Yeah.
But at the time, I feel like he still wasn't, he got no respect.
Yeah.
And now, I know, I mean,
what vehicle do you put him in to come back in? Like, assuming he wants to.
We're talking about Jason Patric.
Yes. What do you do for him? Do you give him a True Detective like series on HBO?
110%.
Okay.
I mean, you're already because again,
4,
watching this now, I'm like, this is in so many ways. I'm like, this would, that's the thing. This now would just be a TV show.
Yeah,
and that's what I kind of loved about it. Is as much as I sat there and I was like, oh yeah, this simultaneously feels like a product of. This is a little bit more low budget than, and it's back when they were still making things like this that were like, well, it's got a little bit of money, and it's got some juice behind it,
$6
but like,
million, yeah, not bad.
But it's not this giant thing.
Well, apparently they did work for free for a little bit, and they like gave up their paycheck so crew could get paid because they really liked Joe Carnahan. They really wanted this movie to get made, so I could appreciate that for him. And I think you could really don't call it Narc, but pull that character that Nick Tellis out and like flesh him out in a 10 episode limited series on HBO and give him his I know this much is true moment thing, or his Big Little Lies thing, where he gets like a 10 episode arc to just show you how fucking good he is.
On a note of the budget, I feel like that third act, I'd be very curious. But I'm like, the fact that it does all of a sudden feel like, oh shit, we got to wrap this up. And like, we've got this warehouse stage to do it in and the parking lot outside. Let's get it done. You know what I'm saying? Like, all of the threads have to come together there. I wonder how much of that was like, that's how it was originally scripted. Or there is a bit of it that just feels like, oh, we got to get it all in. We got to tell the whole story, even if we got to do flashbacks and like, go back and do reshoots for the cutaways or whatever.
All I know is that Jason Patric went on record and said it was like one of the most hellacious places to shoot and be in because it was a legit, like, just vacant factory.
It looks like the end of French Connection. Yeah. Again, I feel like very intentionally so. Yeah. The only thing that's missing is the chyrons at the end telling you what happened to everybody.
And a brilliant chase scene with cars.
True. I feel like again the opening of this goes a long way to I don't need much in the action department from this after that, but we get a little bit of again convincing shootouts. I feel like for the most part, like on the roof and everything, and they look like maybe this isn't like Michael Mann levels of on-screen cop confidence. Maybe they didn't put him through the ringer.
Movie, dude.
But there you go. That's what we need.
Jason Patric lead in a Michael Mann movie.
He has this very particular intensity to him that I've always enjoyed. He's one of those people that goes high when he gets emotional, which I love. He hits this pitch that you don't necessarily expect. It goes back to fucking Lost Boys, but like he's still,
Children of the Night, Michael. Yeah.
Sam! Sam, your brother! Sammy, come on! Sammy, it's me! It's me!
I didn't invite you this time, Max. So is mine! So is mine!
Yeah. Great stuff.
We've talked...
I wanted to talk Patrick. I just kind of wanted to shout him out. I think this is the performance I wanted Rush to be, and this was the late, quote unquote, late period performance where I was like, this should have been a catapult to This should have been his Tarantino-esque comeback movie in a movie that's not a Tarantino movie, you know? Like, oh, we forgot about that guy.
Yeah.
But
and I mean, you know, I don't like to be that guy. I don't like to be the one that's always got to be like, well, you know, why don't we take a minute and think about where we were? But this is 2002. This is, I don't know when it was shot, but this is 2002. We're in the midst of, we're a year after 9/11. We're kind of figuring out what we want to do with ourselves. The first little bit of Marvel, you know, superhero movies have come out. So you're right. We're very in this vein of like, these movies don't get made anymore. They are now, but they're on Netflix and Hulu. They're not made for mass consumption in a studio audience. You know what I mean? Like a huge, like, you know, audience. What are you oohing and ahhing at over there?
I mean, it's not like it's gonna be great, but
you got your pick for this?
No, I have a film called Nightshade that I'd like to tell you a little bit about.
Oh, okay. Nightshade.
Yes.
What?
Nightshade is a mystery thriller. Hey, just quit looking. I'm going to tell you about
tell me.
It's a 2022 release. It's available for rent on Prime right now.
Okay.
When a homicide detective's disturbing dreams reveal parallels to an ongoing investigation, he must do whatever it takes to discover his connection to the brutal killings. And this film, again called Nightshade, stars one Miss Dina Meyer of Starship Troopers fame. Desi?
Oh, okay.
Come on,
Diz,
excuse me.
Who's supposed to be a Mexican-American gentleman, by the way.
Lou Ferrigno Jr.
Okay.
Jason Patric. It doesn't look like he's the detective, unfortunately. And one Mr. James Duvall.
What? So is Patrick the bad guy, you think?
I don't know.
I'd like it if he was a serial killer, because that's one thing I will say. People don't talk about the losers that much. He's a fucking good bad guy in that movie.
He is a good bad guy. I mean, I feel like he has real, like, bad guy energy. And that's the thing, is, like, maybe nobody has properly
because there's that scene where Holt McClellan, like, he throws him off the roof. He's like, what the hell was that? And he's like, what? He's like, that was a I'm done with him look, not a throw him off the roof look.
I forgot, because I never watched this show. But Wayward Pines, which was the
second season, dude, he is really fucking good at it.
Okay, which was and I haven't seen any of it.
You should watch it.
But basically a Shyamalan pseudo Twin Peaks, and it was Matt Dillon in the first season.
Yes.
Who I adore.
Yes.
And Jason Patric in the second season. And I always told myself, you need to watch that show, and I never did it.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you.
What is it? 20 episodes total?
Maybe, if that.
It's free on IMDb TV.
It's one of those that, like, when you watch them, you'll be pissed that they never were able to come back with a third season.
Okay.
Which leads me hope that in 17 years we'll get a return, a la Twin Peaks.
No, but
and I will tell you,
legit.
it is not Twin Peaks at all.
God damn it! I wish.
No. I'm telling you, because you seem like that was the reason why you weren't going to get involved. Was like,
no, that was the only thing that intrigued me about it. Is I was hoping it was like Shyamalan trying to do Twin Peaks.
It's not him. It's his version of Twin Peaks.
Again, that interests me. I would watch that, but I still haven't.
His way of like, oh no, they're not. They're not really in a village. They're just in like a fucking preserve because of some bad shit that happened to their families a long time ago. So it just really isn't, back in the day, like we're thinking. It's that kind of like mentality is the reason behind. It's kind of far-fetched, but it also is like, oh yeah, I would totally be down for that. Like, can I join? Like, can I do that? So watch it and tell me what you think.
I think we might have a lifetimer on our hands here. The Girl in the Bathtub.
What?
Based on the real-life mystery surrounding the death of Julia Law, a young paralegal whose body was found in the apartment of her boss and lover, a prominent Philadelphia lawyer. Was it murder or something more complicated? What could be more complicated than murder? It looks like Jason Patric is the boss.
Oh, God. So maybe he's
Jason Patric is the girl in the bathtub.
Oh, my God. Maybe he's embraced that in his later years. Like, he's just like, you know what? I had my shot, and I'm just going to be the bad guy from now on.
It is just slim pickings for our boy, man.
There's a gem out there I'm sure we can find.
I would like to find one.
You know what he could have been? You know what he would have been great at? He'd have been a great Abe in Lupa.
I was going to say, somebody needed to transition us at some point. Yeah. Okay, Narc. Pretty much a thumbs up going back to it. Not any. I will say now, though, having rewatched it, I'm like, probably never going to watch this movie again.
Yeah, no.
I watched it a bunch when I first got it on DVD, though. This was one of those, I'm 12 and this movie's hard as shit. Like, yeah, I feel like a badass. I do always remember, one last thing I will say on the note of Narc. I went to go buy it at Walmart, and when I got it, it was that bullshit full screen, man.
Oh, yeah.
That made me so angry, because my entire collection up to that point, all widescreens. And then I had this one
full screen.
I don't know. Like, who... Just the fact that they would take the time to make two separate versions, and they would have... One's a red brim, one's a blue brim. Just, what a waste of so much money and paper and plastic.
Yeah, you wonder why things are streaming nowadays.
Yeah. You wonder why DVDs never quite made it.
Yeah.
Because you wasted too much time on full and widescreen. But anytime you would go to Big Lots or anything like that, it's just a pile of full screen copies of movies that nobody wants.
Full screen copies of movies are like the fucking shirts that they send to Africa of the losing team of the Super Bowl. Like, they get them like, hey, we printed these up because, one of them had to win and they didn't win. So we're going to send them to a fucking, orphanage in need in the Congo. That's what full...
They're like, we used to burn these in a public square, but now we send them to charity.
Yeah. You know why Detroit was always on fire? We were burning full-frame DVD copies.
Full-frame DVD?
God.
Dude, it's like disco sucks, but it's just full-frame DVDs suck.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, if we're not going to have baseball this year, somebody could probably get that going. Just come to a stadium, burn your fucking full-frame DVDs.
Dude, you gave us a segue, and we're so not using it.
I know.
2012's
Lupa.
From the... controversial, shall we say?
Why is he controversial?
Because all the Star Wars fans hate him. That's it.
Why do they hate him?
Because he made The Last Jedi, arguably the best movie in the whole fucking franchise. So you can all shut your mouths, internet. Come at us.
Who shot Rogue One? Who made that?
Like
guy?
a couple different people. No. Who? So it was originally Gareth Edwards, the Godzilla guy, not Gareth Evans, the cool one, the Raid guy.
Yeah.
It was Gareth Edwards originally, but then I think
Ron Howard finished it?
No, that's Solo. No, if I'm not mistaken, Tony Gilroy came in and knocked out our boy from previously discussed 2x2, Michael Clayton.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that guy.
I'm pretty sure Tony Gilroy came in and finished up the back half of that.
Well, I mean, I like Rogue One. I thought it was good. I liked The Last Jedi.
I thought The Last Jedi was like arguably a borderline masterpiece. I thought Rogue One was okay. I thought it was fine.
I just like the way that like they were sitting in the X-Wings and you could like look out and they were like hovering over. It gave me a depth of feel, and I saw how like they put screens of what they would see in the cockpit to like mimic that. I thought that was like a neat choice. It felt like the most grounded Star Wars I've ever seen. Like there had to be people on the ground doing
because
shit.
that's what I want from my Star Wars. I want it to feel grounded.
I do. I don't want to plan it.
I want to be able to relate to these droids, bro.
I want to know
Babu Frick, what's going on?
Yes. I need to know what's going on with Jin, and I need to, save the Republic, save the dream, whatever the hell Forrest Whitaker was yelling about. But that doesn't compare to Lupa, the best science fiction movie of 2012. The best science fiction movie up until that point since Moon, and easily one of the top 5 best time travel movies of all time.
What are the other ones? I guess
Terminator, Back to the Future, 12 Monkeys, La Jetée.
Then just pick one or the other.
If I have to pick, then it's La Jetée over 12 Monkeys.
That is the most indie, pretentious thing you have ever said on this podcast.
What?
Well, between the two, clearly La Jetée.
Well, you have to argue if La Jetée is even a movie. If it's just is it a movie?
What's the fifth one? God damn it.
The fifth one.
Well, we said this was. What did you name four? How many did you name?
I named Looper. The Terminator.
Yes.
Back to the Future.
Yes.
La Jetée.
These were all off the dome too. Well, yeah, and we're clipping 12 Monkeys. So yeah, what's the?
If I'm gonna have to pick a new fifth one, what is a good? Now I'm gonna draw a blank trying to come up with a fifth one. I have no. I don't know. What do you?
A kid in King Arthur's court.
A kid in Aladdin's palace. That's not time travel.
Martin Lawrence's Black Knight. They're traveling into the past. That is clearly time travel.
But all of those have something. They loop. Well,
they're trapped in the past movies.
All of those are a loop where there's like there's not.
No, Gavin. This movie is a loop.
They're all a loop.
You're getting confused, man. This one's the loop. You're telling me Black Knight's a looper?
Yes.
You're
yes.
trying to think of some
Black
other
Knight's
obscure ones. Come on. Oh my dude, why are we blanking on time travel movies? Time After Time? Right?
Yeah.
That's
Primer, maybe? Primer? People talk Primer a lot?
I mean, yeah. Fuck Shane Carruth, but
yeah.
Is it Shane Carruth?
I think so.
Yeah, fuck that guy, but I did like that movie, yeah.
Synchronic. Synchronic would be my fifth in terms of time travel. And it's not about time travel. That's a thing in the movie.
Time Cop.
Time Cop, sure, yeah.
I like the movie Time Cop.
The Van Damme vehicle.
I like the Money
Cop.
Pit. I like Time Cop.
I do not like The Godfather.
The Splits.
It's insistent upon itself.
It insists upon itself.
Yeah,
I don't know why that's again, I know that's way more your show, but for some reason that bit makes me laugh so hard.
Well, how can you? I've never finished it. What? You've never finished it? How can you say you don't like it if you've never finished it? It insists upon itself, Lois. Of course it insists. It's insistent.
Looper.
The year's 2044.
Here's the beauty. No matter the tangent, we'll always
loop
back. I don't know why I'm having so much fun with this one.
Yeah.
For a movie that I genuinely... I went back to and I was like, dude, why did you wait this long to rewatch this movie?
Yeah.
So good. Careful with the chords.
Just loop it back in.
Careful with the jerking your head
Just
backwards.
loop the chord back in. We're fine.
Can you hear okay?
Yeah,
Can you hear okay in both your headphones?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looper from 2012. You want to give him a plot synopsis?
It's 2044. In 30 years, time travel will be invented and instantly outlawed. Now, the only thing that's used for is by the criminal underworld to send back people they want disappeared. And it's all going well until that one day that your own self gets sent back in time and you have to murder him.
And you're like, I end up looking like Bruce Willis.
Motherfucker.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Or you're like, oh, I got the best bald head the world has to offer. Truly the best chrome dome in the biz.
What if that happens and he shoots him and he just goes to move the body and a harmonica just falls right out of his pocket. You're like, oh, God damn it. But you've seen because you see Joseph Gordon-Levitt practicing saxophone, and then the harmonica falls out and you're like, shit, yeah, it's completely original. Do you want me to read you the rules? I can read you the rules of this. I don't know if you've ever fleshed them out or looked to see, what's what.
No, sure. Enlighten me.
I have to find them. I had them up just a second ago. So essentially, your internet's being stupid. So, again, it's the near future. There really isn't a lot changed, and that's what I enjoy about it. It's not
lo-fi sci-fi.
Right. I would argue that
where is the budget for these sort of movies right now?
They get turned into series or Netflix movies.
30 mil, right? Is that what I saw?
30 mil, yeah. 30 mil.
And it's one of the most unique, engaging, and like the world building is phenomenal. And he does it on what feels like a shoestring, but you don't feel it at all. So good. But yes.
That's what happens when you don't have a studio calling the shots. They give you the money, you go make the movie, and they're like, hey, okay, yeah, I can get behind this.
Yes.
And they don't question it. I don't think that this doesn't feel... This feels like he had complete control. I don't know. I didn't get that far in the research, but definitely feels like, you know, what he brought to the table. They were like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, why not?
And I'm pretty sure this one had been, from what I remember around the time and various commentaries, I think this one had been in the hopper for a while as a dream project. Like, he had this outline, I believe, like either pre-Brick or right in the aftermath of Brick.
Right.
But it was clearly one that it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna need a little bit more money for that. So I kind of need the proving ground. Brick comes out. He's hot shit. That's not a movie that like lights the box office on fire or anything, but it's a total critical darling and a real calling card. A real like, this dude is something. We need to keep our eyes on him. And then Brothers Bloom comes out, a movie I fucking adore, but I feel like nobody paid attention to at all when it came out.
Probably. And
has not really gotten the proper reassessment I think that it deserves. Fantastic Ruffalo. I mean, he's great in everything, but in a mode that you're not quite used to seeing him in. And great Adrian Brody as well. And it's essentially... It kind of shows you a different shade of him that he can do, that I think you see more of as his career goes on. And definitely there's a lot of it in his Star Wars movie.
Right.
And there's a lot of it in Knives Out, which is the dude likes to laugh.
Oh, yeah.
Even when he's, throwing a lot at you, concept-wise, and maybe gets a little heady, there's always some humor to string you along. Even in Brick, which is a pretty dark, brooding movie that still has some huge laughs in it. But Brothers Bloom is essentially, it's just like an out-and-out caper almost, with some dramatic stakes to it, but like it's a fun romp. It's a ride. It's kind of, I think people were saying it at the time, but it's very much like if Wes Anderson directed Ocean's 11 or something. Like it's that vibe, kind of a twee take on a caper movie. And I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it holds up, and it's one I would like to actually go back to because it's been a while. So he's coming off the back of that, which was a little bit more mixed. It was not as beloved as Brick.
Right.
So I think him going genre and like sticking with his boy, his kind of initial muse, JGL, somebody I would like to see come back into the Rian Johnson fold a little bit more. He's always been present in all the movies, but
even the Star Wars one?
Yeah.
Who was he in that?
He's a voice in the Canto Bite sequence or something. He's in there. They worked him.
That's right. I remember him saying something about that. You're right.
And of course, he's in the show within a show in Knives Out.
Oh yeah.
The soap opera that they're watching. I don't even think you see him on camera. You just hear him delivering dialogue. Yeah.
So, time travel. You want to hear the rules, the laws.
Oh, yeah. Did you get them up?
Time travel cannot be adjusted. Time travel is a one-way ticket. Both versions of yourself can exist. Time travel is illegal. You can't do it. You may communicate across time, and the future has infinite possibilities. So, we've always heard, like, every movie up until this point, Back to the Future 2, all that, you can't go back in the past and see yourself back then. You'll cause a rift in space-time.
Right.
But what this movie says is, oh no, you can, because, you exist from one point to the time in the future that we send you back. And you're in a loop. Plain and simple. Looper. Boom.
Right.
The idea and premise is this guy Joe, our boy, GGL, he's a looper, and he basically works, for the mob as a contract killer. And
it seems like, to be clear, this seems like the easiest job on the planet. Mm-hmm. I don't know how the setups are for everybody, because we only see like one or two of them. But for JGL, you get to drive out in the middle of a cornfield. You're learning French on the way.
Right.
You're just hanging out. And then you just got to make sure you're at this place at a particular time. Boom, somebody pops up, you shoot them. We're talking like milliseconds.
Right.
And then you're done.
Dude, that opener, dude.
Then I guess you just got... So Veronica had never seen this movie.
Oh, God.
I loved throwing this on where she immediately was just like, wait, what the fuck just happened to dude just like materialize out of thin air? Wait a sec. I thought Joseph Gordon-Levitt was just talking French. Like, what the fuck's going on? And then boom, he killed him. She immediately was like, what?
Right.
What? And you imagine, I'm like, this is the kind of thing you read like the opening description of this in a script and you're like, oh, fuck, we got to make this, right?
Yeah.
We got to fucking make this. It doesn't matter what comes after this at all.
This is it.
This conceit of like, wait, what?
Like,
and then immediately into the narration where he's like, time travel hasn't been invented yet, but 30 years from now it will be. And you're like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'm in. You literally, this is what you shoot. This is what you spend your advance from your backers or whatever who want to help you get it made. You shoot this 5-minute scene and you pitch that to everybody. And you say, we want to make the rest of this movie. Are you in or are you out? And they're like, yes, here's $30 million. Go make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's essentially his deal.
Killer opening. And then you've got all this voiceover with him bringing you into the world. And, like, I love how economical it is. Because to me, it doesn't overstay its welcome. Mm-mm. It does not turn into a Blade Runner sort of thing. No. And it does throw a lot at you, but the clarity of it and the way it kind of like, he tells you something once, you see it in practice, and then there's a payoff to it.
Right.
Like, everything kind of happens in threes. It doesn't overwhelm. Like, I think the first time through, in general, it can be a little bit like, oh shit, I'm a little lost here.
Right.
But definitely going back to it now, I'm like, it just what Rian Johnson does best. He, more so than Nolan, who I think people used to say this about, but he's just a Swiss watch fucking filmmaker, dude. There's not a wasted frame in any of his movies. Everything is narrative. Mm-hmm. Everything you're seeing at any given point is telling you a story. And you could use this as a criticism, because this starts to get into that, it's an issue, not really an issue, but like Tarantino's somebody that comes to mind where I'm like, his movies are very rarely about anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? The movies are about their plots and their characters within them. Mm-hmm. But there are very rarely grander themes you can put on. Now, when you move into the back half of his career, maybe it's a little bit of a different story. Mm-hmm. But most of his movies they're just about the story. The entertainment factor, that's it. They're not. There's no grander theme.
They're made for you to come watch them. They're not made for you to think about after you're done.
Theoretically, other than wanting to revisit those moments again.
Right, yeah.
Very much so. And Rian Johnson, I think you can accuse a bit of, yes, these are like perfectly crafted, but they're not necessarily saying anything. But I don't necessarily think that all movies have to at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
This one just, I don't know. This one, there are things that this one does say, particularly about violence and like what it means and what its place is in the world and how your choices and decisions affect you your entire life. Like it's very.
I was going to say that as a highlight or a feature of this one.
Right.
That I think it transcends that, where some of his movies can feel a little insular and like, oh, they were just kind of about this like magic trick sort of like cool reveal moment sort of thing. Whereas like Brick, even though it has emotions to it, it is a more stylish movie. Like that's what sticks with you.
Right.
is the style, not necessarily like the emotional journey of
No, it's
the
all
characters
about,
and all of it.
when you watch Brick, you're like, this fucking guy loves noir. Like, he just loves
Yeah, you're
film
like,
noir.
this guy loves movies and gets genre and likes playing with genre.
Right.
So I think that's what we kind of initially had him pegged as. And when you get to this, that is like, okay, dude, you're throwing your hat into the time travel sci-fi realm, and you're going to just be like, well, this is the sci-fi movie I've always wanted to see. And one of his other biggest influences, that it's one of the biggest threads throughout all of these movies, even Knives Out to a certain extent, which may not seem totally obvious, this dude fucking loves anime.
Oh, yeah.
So much.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so few filmmakers that are able to bring elements of anime that would not seem like the most immediately obvious to you,
right,
and bring them into live action in ways that totally play and don't feel like, oh, this is a ripoff or a riff.
Right.
But it's that, amalgamation stew sort of thing. And that's the thing I notice more and more when I go back to this. And like the kind of just slightly upgraded, like we're still living in like kind of a normal society. There's just these few elements that are
like it's not, that's
cranked
the
up.
thing I appreciate, because in any of these, I think you watch a movie that has something to do with time travel. You watch it for the future. You watch it for what it's going to be. You don't. So when you set one, like I mentioned Terminator. That's set in the time that it's made in. It's set in the 80s. It's not like, well, this is 1997 and it's not Escape from New York. It's not made in 81, set in 97. It's made in 84. Assume it's present day. But the opening of that, where it's like, this will happen to us. These machines will roll over all these fucking skulls because, we're going to be enslaved by machines. That's what you go to for. To me, that's what I always went to the Terminator series for, was who had the best vision of what was going to happen to us. That's why 1 and 2 are always going to be perfect, because Cameron's cinematography as to what the future is haunting. It's literally just like metal crushing nothing but bones, and like that's terrifying as a kid. And then, boom, you're back where we are. So this movie, essentially, watching it in 2012, this movie is what, 30 years away, and now we're about 20 years away from it. So it's telling me that in 20 years from me watching it now, something's going to happen. Somebody from the future is going to come back and say, look, where I'm from, this technology exists to send people back in time. They sent me back in time. I'm not going anywhere. I know everything. I know what you're going to do. I know when you're going to do it, and I'm not going to tell you, but if you come work for me, I'm going to give you something that was already yours. Give you what was yours. It's like, it's this weird, like, and that's why I like that it's Jeff Daniels in the Abe role, because it's like this weird semi-god complex thing of like, you can't tell him anything he doesn't already know about you. He's got detailed files on exactly who you are and what you've been doing the last 30 years, So, in 20 years, we're going to get told that, there's this technology in 2074 that, like, it comes out and they instantly outlaw it for obvious reasons, a la Time Cop. Go watch Time Cop. You understand why they would outlaw it. And so it's obvious that, like, and the thing I do appreciate about it is the science behind it is explained once, very low key, low tech, and then that's just it. You don't get any more of it. And I appreciate that, because it allows you to, like, focus more on who's doing what, the characters of it, because, like I said, they do have like hover cars, but he drives a fucking Miata, like an old school Miata.
But it's treated with the reverence of like, oh my God, this guy's got a fucking Miata. Like, that's the vibe of it.
Right.
And I love the idea that, in 2044, a fucking like whatever Miata from the early 2000s would be a fucking classic car.
Right.
And it would be this badass thing that, like, only the dudes with money, only the loopers, man. They're the only ones cruising around and stuff like that.
And that's my thing. Is like, okay, everyone seems to know they're loopers. That's my only issue is like the circle they hang in. And again, this is Kansas City. This isn't like New York. And the fact that he's like, if he'd done this in any other city, it would have been an achievement. It's not hard to be the king of like fucking Kansas City,
right,
and whatnot. So it works because it's big enough, but it's also out of the way enough that any rumblings that happen, you could pretty much control and contain. You know, but if I'm like,
but we're also led to believe that, like, in the 2044 timeline, like, there's no law,
as far as
really. Like, society, we see that early initial shot where, like, people are just getting shot dead in the streets. Yeah. So I always took it as, like, society is in the process of collapsing because of lack of resources, money, etc., whatever. There are no jobs.
I would think it's the oncoming of the TKs.
Yeah.
That's that. If these people are born with disability, then there must be no God. So then there's going to be a collapse in what we know as human civilization.
That's I love that, like, okay, he lays out all of this stuff for you, and then you're like, you see the hover bike, you see Paul Dano, and I was like, oh yeah, I fucking forgot. Hell yeah, Paul Dano's in this movie.
Fucking Riddler, bro.
Yeah. So they're driving in the car, and you see him twirling the coin or whatever. And then it's like, he's already set up for you. Okay, time travel exists. We're loopers. We kill people, like, from the future, but in our present, which is technically the past for them. But okay, you with me so far? Okay, by the way, also, now, like, 10% of the population has this genetic mutation known as TK. And of course, I'm listening to this and I'm like, dude, this is the most anime shit ever. I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, okay, cool. But I feel
when
like...
does Tetsuo show up?
Exactly.
And where is Kaneda? What are we doing?
Why have they not just let you, Rian Johnson, make the Akira movie that everybody's been talking about for years, that fucking DiCaprio owns the rights to? Like, after this movie, why did they not go, oh, okay, this is the ultimate calling card for him to go and make that?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you saw what I did with 30 million, right?
Give me 100, see what I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Netflix gave him, like, all the money in the world, not to quote a Ridley Scott title, but right. For Knives Out too, because I don't know how the hell else he got that cast, but I'm like, yeah, dude, like, Netflix, tell DiCaprio, you guys got a good relationship now. Don't look up.
And let's think about it.
Let's get this Akira movie.
$30 million budget. How much of that was Bruce Willis' salary? Good 10, maybe 12.
You want to talk about Willis for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, we can.
What are you talking about?
He's
Gavin, what are we talking about? Well, Willis, of course.
I don't know, Mr. Drummond. What are we talking about?
Have we hit him before other than Color of Night? Is that the only time?
Color of Night, that's
okay, so I feel like we talked about it a little bit at the time, and this is in an era where I feel like he decided to try again.
Yeah.
For a little bit. Now, he's still, granted, I'm sure at this time, still doing you pay me, what is his rate?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's like...
way above scale.
No, but I think he legit is like $1 million a day.
Yeah.
Like, I'll do your movie, I'll be in 2 scenes if you can afford me for 2 or 3 days. Like, I think that's his going rate or whatever. He doesn't do the 20 million a picture. He does I'll do 12 hours for $1 million kind of thing on any movie. So every, like, foreign distributed action movie is like, oh yeah, we can put a little bit of our budget into getting Bruce Willis. That's enough to sell it in foreign territories. Boom, we're good. So he's still doing all of that at this time, but I feel like he was just kind of like, I don't know, maybe I do want to give a shit again. Because this is right around the same time as like Moonrise Kingdom, which I thought was like, oh shit, all right, you really popped in here. Because I'm always interested whenever Wes Anderson brings in somebody outside of the players group to see if, like, are they going to work and are they going to stick around is the other thing. And if I'm not mistaken, Willis has never done anything else with him. But he was so dialed in that movie, and he's one of the standouts. And, like, people were like, maybe he'll get a supporting actor nod off of this. And never quite happened. But I feel like he is in it on this one because he knows he's got a good script. And, like, I think the dude's at least got a little bit of taste. He probably saw Brick and could at least see, like, this kid knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. But everything we've heard about him is, like, he's Mr. Big Swinging Dick on set. And I have a hard time believing that he wouldn't be that way because I feel like that's also why he likes to work with, like, unknowns and, like, no-name directors because he feels like he can, you know, man up around them. But I've also heard this about Willis, which is apparently he likes to, like, test directors.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that.
And I can see him testing Rian Johnson and Rian Johnson being like, I'm a fucking born filmmaker, dude. Like, get the fuck out of my face. But not in that tone, but, like, just like he answers his question in such a way that is basically like, yeah, I know what the fuck I'm doing. And Bruce Willis would be like, all right, respect. Okay, I'm here to play for this kid. Yeah. But no, I've heard that's what he does is literally first day on set, he basically like dresses down the director or like ask him a question. If he doesn't know the fucking answer to it, he's either like, okay, I'm trying on this one or you're getting the phoned in version of me.
Right.
And this one, he's not phoning it in. You want to talk about somebody else who is not phoning it in?
So is that what happened with Good Day to Die Hard? You think the director just lost the battle the first day?
I don't know what the fuck happened in that film, dude.
It was not a good day to Die Hard, that's for sure.
I thought the quality control on Live Free was really good. Mm-hmm. I still stand up for that one.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. That was a steep fall off. I know a lot of people don't like 4 at all, but
I think
I thought for what it was, it played.
Oh, no, Live Free or Die Hard is like, it's like 1, 3, 4, 2.
I would agree with you there.
Yeah. But I think that may have been just like a cash grab. Like we gotta make us a Die Hard movie, or we gotta get rid of the rights to a Die Hard movie.
Now they can just make the Die Hard battery commercials.
Right. Yes. Which are amazing. Yeah.
I did such a full circle moment. I'm sorry. As a kid, I always I would see Die Hard batteries and be like, oh, like the movie, and
right.
You know, as a kid, when you're just like, oh, 2 things can't have the same name.
Right.
Like that's not allowed. So I just always assumed like, oh, it's connected. In the same way that didn't Dad have like some shades that were like police shades, mm-hmm. but they were marketed as like, because it was in Japan, it was like John McClane's shade. Yeah. Am I crazy?
Mm-hmm. No, you're right.
That was a thing.
Yeah, they were like the aviator things he wore as like policemen. Yeah. And it's all because, they said, will you come here? Will you take some pictures, do a few shoots, we'll pay $2 million just to put these sunglasses on and you can ride. Yeah. It's like most people don't know that Hulk Hogan had a full-on wrestling career in Tokyo. Like, as he's the biggest star in the world in America, he's a huge name in Tokyo as well. Because you just fly over there and do 2 or 3 nights wrestling and do promotions and then fly right back to the U.S. It's crazy. But to loop us back into this story, there is no wrestling in 2040. It's literally just people killing people and doing drugs.
Yeah. A bunch of eyeball shots.
Yeah. With blunderbuss. That is the one thing that I was just like, what is this? What are we going for by like, the main weapon is a blunderbuss? I don't understand. I get the pistols. Those are cool. Like, it's like cowboy shit,
Well, that's kind of what I like about it, is it's steampunky
retro
without going full on goggles and shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I could see
it's
that.
Just a little light touch, which again is what to me keeps it feeling very unique unto itself, because he's pulling from all these different bits that he likes to create his own world. And I love the bit of like, he goes in for the first sit down with Jeff Daniels. We don't have to go beat by beat. We'll do it however you want to do. But, and he's like, yeah, you guys are, it's just a cycle. Like, it's literally a loop. You guys are just dressing like the nostalgia from,
all the shit
40 years before you. Like, that's all it is.
Do something original. Learn
and
Mandarin.
While he's saying this, he's wearing like a cleric type robe where you're like, oh yeah, that's the point we all evolved to, is like the Matrix revolutions where everybody's just wearing fucking woven rags and
see,
shit.
Here's my thing. is he not eventually going to cause a problem? Because he's going to exist in a world 30 years, 3 days, 2 hours, however the time it is. He's going to exist in that. He's already born at that point. In 2040, he would have already been born. Is that going to be the real crux of it? Like, that's the real problem, right? Or is it not? Because what if he bumps into his own self? Like, he can't do that.
You're talking about Jeff Daniels.
Right. So is that the
if
logic?
I am not...
If you come back, if you're in the future, you're sent back and you die, you're fine. But if your future self comes back and tells you something, that can instantly change the whole game. In fact, JGL says that to him. He's like, the minute you say something, I'll just change it.
Yeah, the minute you show me a picture of what she looks like, I'll know to just fucking avoid her. I'll go marry someone else.
Right.
Dude, JGL fucking kills it. This entire movie.
Yes.
And again, Veronica's watching this with me. It took her, I had to point it out. I was like, you see he's wearing the facial prosthetics, right? And she's like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, that's not what Joseph Gordon-Levitt looks like.
At all.
They're doing it to bridge this gap for Bruce Willis. And I'm like, and here's the thing. You don't really need it because his performance is so good. The delivery, the like.
Oh yeah, he studied
all of it
Willis
is so
the entire
good
time.
that you don't need the makeup.
Yeah.
Because your mind just kind of wants to believe it anyways. And once they start actually interacting with each other, I mean, all bets are off. You're asking me about the Jeff Daniels character, though. Did you not find this in any of your research? And I may be misremembering, but I thought this was a thing when the movie came out that was like fan theory, and then he eventually confirmed it, or maybe he confirms it in the commentary.
Maybe. What are you talking about?
Kid Blue is Jeff Daniels.
Oh, well, no, because Kid Blue gets killed.
Yeah, but do you see Jeff Daniels after that? No, because Kid Blue gets killed out in the cornfield sequence, and then...
He would never have been able to make it to the future to come back if he gets killed in that timeline.
So you're saying that collapses everything in that moment.
So
Bruce Willis should have blinked out of existence.
Yeah, if he was...
Do we see Kid Blue die? He just gets shot off of his...
He shoots him off of that.
Yeah.
And everything I've read says he kills Kid Blue, and then doesn't he get? No, he doesn't get exploded. It's the other guy that gets exploded. I thought we saw a kill shot.
I don't remember. I truly don't remember. But I thought that was a thing, that Kid Blue and Abe are the same person.
Which would make a lot of sense.
Their whole dynamic with each other, while he's always pissed off that, like, you're an idiot. He's looking at himself like, oh my God, you're a fuck. And it's almost like the reason that his loop is the way that he gets to be this fucking dude is the wizened older version of him comes back to himself to basically say, hey, stop being a fuck up. Stop being an idiot. They both have the Southern accent.
And it's okay.
Am I crazy?
A little bit, but listen. Kid Blue captures old Joe, takes him to Abe. Old Joe breaks out, killing Abe and his henchmen. Goes to the farm. Followed by Kid Blue. While young Joe kills Kid Blue, old Joe pursues Sarah and Sid. That's what the plot description is. So by that point, it's like, maybe, yeah, because you don't actually see a body. I know he shoots the ground and then shoots up as he's driving off. And if he can kill people farther away, I'm assuming right where you're at is you're gonna get taken out. I don't know.
But I'm sorry. Hold on just a second. Again, we could be talking about all of this forever.
We're gonna be putting straws and making diagrams.
Which is one of my favorite things about the movie is that it says, hey, shut up and stop thinking about all this stuff.
Right.
Yet you still can't help but do it. Kid Blue being Abe and dying doesn't negate the time travel being invented in the future and this structure existing.
Right, but Abe would never have been able to come back. He would never live long enough to become Abe and come back in time.
But the older version of Abe is already dead at that point. So what does it matter that the younger version dies? I don't understand what the issue would be.
This is where it gets crazy. Okay.
Bruce Willis killed old Abe, Jeff Daniels,
Right.
when he comes back to the...
Right.
When they bring him into the stronghold, essentially. He kills all the loopers. He's closing everything out.
Right.
Right.
But which is fine for
Right.
that.
So younger version of Kid Blue still exists.
Until he's dead. He can't grow up and live into the future to come back if he dies in 2044.
I agree with you there.
Right.
Jeff Daniels is still alive, okay? Jeff Daniels is still alive.
Yeah, he does. I see what you're saying. I see what
Jeff
you're saying.
Daniels is still alive,
They
and
can't-
young
they can
Kid
exist,
Blue gets
yes.
killed.
Jeff
Daniels blinks out of existence, correct?
Right. Okay.
If older version of him is killed,
And it doesn't matter.
in the present,
Then,
okay,
you're right. It doesn't matter.
then only younger version exists. So younger version dying at that point in said timeline
Right.
would not affect anything.
You're right. Yeah. I see what you're
You
saying.
know what I'm saying?
Right.
He already completed his loop. He came back and
Yeah.
as the older version
circle.
died.
I got it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
He out time travel by, I'm saying Rian Johnson did,
Oh yeah.
by making it a loop, by basically saying, I'm sorry, whatever elements you can throw at me, I can explain it as it was always meant to happen this way.
Yeah.
It was always meant to happen this way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that is maddening about this movie and totally satisfying about it at the same time. It makes the ending so fucking brilliant. But
Oh yeah.
we have so many other things we can hit on if you want to.
Where do you want? Let's
Dude, the Paul Dano sequence with
yeah.
his older one of the coolest torture scenes in the history of movies, which is I'm not seeing what they're doing to Paul Dano. I'm only seeing what's happening to the future version of him. And I remember even having the logic. This is when you know that Rian Johnson is operating on another fucking level. Because I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I'm getting it. Okay. His fingers are, I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like, oh, this is such a cool idea. Like, oh, his nose is gone. Like, I'm losing my shit. And then I start trying to overthink it, right? I'm like, but that's not how like aging on an injury would work. Like, that just, no, because like you would die or you would bleed out from something like that. Like, how are his legs disappearing and like all of this shit? And then the reveal of they literally have him hooked up. They're sustaining his life as they're torturing him. Again, is like, oh, you thought I didn't think of that shit? Oh yeah, I fucking did.
We told you the scene before. We're not going to kill him.
It's that mentality throughout the movie of every time you think, aha, you're not as clever as you think you are, Rian Johnson. He's like, no, I am actually.
Yeah.
I thought of everything, you fucker.
Right.
And that's, I mean, I was already in love with the guy from Brick, but this is when I was like, dude, you could tell this guy has obsessed over all of this shit we're talking about longer than any of us will ever spend talking about it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He spent more time daydreaming about the implications of all of this shit. But whereas something like Primer, which, have you seen Primer?
No.
Something like Primer is it is like baffling because it tries to go the Stephen Hawking, like we're gonna science this shit and we don't care if it all goes way over your head. And it supposedly is a movie that, like, you know, you rewatch it enough times, you can kind of like, you start to get it. I think it's a little maddening. What he does here, though, is he has all of that same depth of like, oh, but the implications. But because he has this very core human story and it centers around one character and the idea of having dueling motivations at different points in your life.
Right.
And not being able to think, you know. 30 years ahead.
That scene where he's like, the last time you saw her face. He's trying to remember his wife's face. That's his whole motivation for, trying to do that. When you know that, like, JGL and her, are getting closer and whatnot. And you're like, okay, because it's, that to me is probably one of the standouts. Like, that's,
That's good shit.
Yeah.
I love the, so he aids Paul Dano, who is in trouble with the loopers because he did what you're not supposed to do. He let his loop go. He let his loop run.
Right.
Again, the other brilliant thing is the delivery of the narration of JGL, but it's just this is called letting your loop run.
Right.
Like, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
This is called closing your loop.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he aids Paul Dano, so he has to go in and talk to Jeff Daniels, and it's like, hey, so we know you've been stockpiling your shit. We know you're ready to get out of here when your contract's up. Basically, give him up or give us half your shit.
Right.
That's the deal. And so he sells him out. He sells out Paul Dano, and they get him, they torture him, etc. So shortly thereafter, his loop comes back. Yada, yada, yada. We get to a great early, like, dual perspective scene, which I love that he starts playing around with. Because initially, I love that there's, like, no score for it, too. But, like, when Willis shows up, it's just immediately, like, boom, shoot me in my gold that's strapped to my back. I'm going to throw a brick at you. I'm running at you. Boom, you're out. We don't know what happened. And now is that when they first do this is what you were supposed to do, is
right.
Kill yourself. And we see this is the trajectory you were on.
Right. Year 1.
Yes.
Year 10.
And you see that he essentially just kind of like parties himself to death and you know, eventually gets saved by his wife, who we learn is murdered in the future by this crazy crime lord syndicate and the Rainmaker. Excuse me.
Right.
Yes. And so that's his whole motivation is I got to come back and I got to undo this shit because I got word that this is the period of time where I could basically come and pull a Hitler child murder, and take out this guy before he becomes a problem.
Right.
Yes. So that's what he's back to do. Meanwhile, JGL is just like, no, I'm going to kill you because I just want to live my life like
right.
the one I want to. I don't know any of this bullshit you're talking about. So he goes back to his apartment and there's the whole thing. The loopers are closing in. Quick little shootout, and then he falls off the railing. And like you see JGL's side of it, but then I love looping back around and you get, oh, Bruce Willis was there the whole fucking time. And like there's the great oneer of him just following up behind the cars. I'm just imagining how they shot these, like some of these sequences simultaneously or like multi-takes, because it all looks like it intercuts very well when they do all this stuff.
It's very Back to the Future too.
Very much so. A huge touchstone, I'm sure, for this film. But that's, and again, these sequences are filled with, I mean, that falling shot to me is so like straight out of an anime, just the way it's staged and everything. Brutal scene where he traps Kid Blue in the
his vault.
In his vault and smashes the hand, dude. Oh, so visceral when it happens.
Now, see, the only thing that would have been is the smashed hand then. If I would have seen something on Jeff Goldblum's hand as like a permanent... Not Goldblum. Jeff Daniels.
I almost said Bridges, so we were all... He's got the great big bushy beard.
Yeah, well, if I'd have seen like just a tiny wrap or like a tiny like leather arthritic thing to be like...
And again,
this was my injury from back in the day, I would have been like, okay, I get it. It would have made a lot more sense to me.
Maybe it's a fan theory or it's an Easter egg. I'm not sure, but for some reason I have those two connected in my head that they are the same person. But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. we get the diner scene with them. He does the writing on his waitress's name, which we've seen that set up through the Dano character, communicating with his past self, or them torturing him. But we get that great sit down. They basically end up in another shootout. And I love this where he, like, the loopers come in, the other loopers, and it's like, no, he immediately just turns and, like, he's trying to take him out. It's
not until they run out of the field that they look at him like, fuck, we're here for you
we're
too.
Supposed to get you. Oh, shit. Yeah. I love the clumsiness of some of the action beats, and I love Kid Blue just being, like, a complete fuck up most of the time with all of this stuff. But yeah, this leads into kind of the midsection of the movie where we get introduced to our other important characters who we should probably get to, which is Emily Blunt and
Sarah and Sid.
Yes, and her little creepy son.
Crazy.
Yeah.
He's basically, to me, that the whole setup of the TK thing just solely exists to be like, that's why this kid is how he is. Which doesn't make a lot of sense.
And because he wants to play baby Akira a little bit. He's like, they're not going to let me make a big one, so I'm just going to make a little one.
Which it doesn't make sense because, like, if that's his power and he could do that and blow people up, why would he not just do that in the future? Like, the events of everything happen. He becomes the Rainmaker because Joe comes back in time and shoots his mother, and he witnesses his murder, and he grows up on a train car all alone by himself, and he decides, you know what? I need to go make this thing. I need to work my way up so that when I get to be 30 years old, I can go ahead and just swoop in and I'll fucking lay waste to all these loopers. I'm going to play the long game. I'm going to get back at them years from now. But if he has that ability to just, like, when he gets mad and can't control himself, he just yells and people, explode into, eviscera. Why not just do that back then? Like, do that in the future. I get they're tracked. It's hard to get rid of a body. When you send a body back in time, there's no trace of them. Even if you just buried them and they got dug up, you wouldn't know who they were.
That's the other thing is, like, all of the knowledge of the future we have is all via
Abe.
The Jeff Daniels character, which is like, we can only trust him as much as we choose to.
Right.
He only has maybe a limited amount of information himself.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what I want to know. What was his reason? What did he fuck up? And that's why he has to come back. They're like, we got to have somebody go. We've invented the stuff.
Which again would track with him being Kid Blue.
We don't like you. Like, you're just not.
He's a fuck up.
Yeah. You fucked up. Like, you messed something up, so you're going back. And yeah, I could see it. Yeah. Now that I think about it more and more, I could see that Kid Blue is actually Abe.
So, they begin a romance.
Yeah.
It's pretty chaste. And he also starts bonding with the kid a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're still like, this kid's got something going on.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure. Anyways, eventually, our old buddy Garrett Dillahunt shows up. Never upset to see this gentleman.
No.
Always a good time. So he shows up, he's poking around, he's asking questions, and I love JGL telling the kid, like, hey, this guy's, like, he's totally fine, I know him, like, once he realizes we're not there, he's not going to hurt your mom, like, this guy's not an asshole, basically, like, you're going to be good. And then when he does enter that scene, or he comes back, like, because he leaves that first time, right?
They scoop him and put him in the crawl space, thinking he's gone, he's good. So he, they come out, kid's going up the stairs, and then he comes back in and confronts them. That's why he's on the further side of the room, gun out and everything. Yeah. And old boy, the kid falls, trying to come back and protect his mom. The kid falls, and he instantly. Joseph Gordon-Levitt goes instantly to, like, help him, and you think, oh, Emily Blunt too, and the last second you're like, she just grabs him and yanks him out of the house, and you're like, what was this? And then just boom. That's my favorite shot of them going in the house, and you pan, and the backside of the house is just dripping blood red from where he got smashed to it, and they come out the other side. That was one of my favorite shots in the
my
movie.
my favorite shot is all of the shit suspended in the air, including Garrett Dillahunt, and you just like it's a wide shot, so you don't notice it initially, and it's not like a huge music cue or anything, but you just see like his chest burst essentially,
right,
from both sides, and just blood, just like again something you would see in a fucking anime, and. It's a quick wide shot, and this is a PG-13. It's PG-13, right?
I believe so.
I think it is. I think it squeaks under there. Maybe it is rated R. Was Looper R?
Mm-hmm.
In my head, this is PG-13.
I have no idea. Maybe that's might have been why I didn't actually
I'm an idiot. It's rated R.
I was going to say, I think it should be.
It definitely should be. But yeah, incredible sequence. So then we basically, there's the other thread, which we didn't really mention, of because Bruce Willis is the future version, obviously, things that Gordon-Levitt does in the past, or in the present rather,
right?
He then has memories of. So like if he changes locations, or he eventually knows where he's gonna be,
right?
And he, in parallel to JGL and Emily Blunt building their relationship and all that, he is tracking down other kids and murdering them.
One of them.
He definitely does one of them. In the midst of him about to do the second one, which is actually the daughter of the dancer that JGL was pining after earlier on in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's right at the same time that Dillahunt shows up, right?
Right,
because it's basically that happens, and Willis sees, oh my God, this is definitely
this is
the
where
kid.
I gotta go. Yeah, I'm done.
So
I don't have to,
it spares him,
because the thing you see, which again, it goes back into talking about your consequences, what it is. The whole "would you go kill Hitler" as a kid thing. After he commits that first one, he's under the underpass where like other vagrants and stuff around, and he is just beside himself. And it's like having to tell yourself, I just went and killed this innocent child. Because, and realizing that in doing so, he didn't change anything because his wife is still dead. She's not there. He doesn't have new memories with her.
right?
Anything like that. Because, again, if he is to actually kill this child, he would disappear. He would be no longer. There'd be no need for him to be there anymore. You know? So, coming to terms with that and realizing, like, I had this goal. I was going to tear it all down. And I had to fucking kill an innocent little child, and nothing happened to me. Well, I just killed this innocent child for no reason. Like that, my love for my slain wife that I want back and I want more time for, I love you enough to murder children. Like that's what he's saying. And that's like...
Well, and the fact that it goes there, period.
Yeah. What movie
the
is
idea
doing
that, like, you think the dangling thread is going to be that he would do it to this main kid. The fact that there are, in fact, it's kind of a Terminator situation.
Exactly.
I'm not quite sure which one, so I'm kind of just rolling up to doors and blowing kids' heads off.
Right.
Like, it's a heavy concept, but I like that the movie does not shy away from it.
Exactly.
And it doesn't, and it tries to set up from the get-go. It's like, no, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt character is kind of like...
He's a bad guy. He's not good.
These aren't good people.
No.
Like, he's not somebody you would traditionally be rooting for.
Right.
And I remember thinking, because of the way she's presented, it is just like, oh yeah, it's the typical, like, it's the dead wife scenario, like the shit we make fun of Christopher Nolan for, but it's like, oh yeah, I was a complete piece of shit, but then like she showed me how to live again, and like forget, this woman who never has a line of dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce, but the
flashback
to me,
flash forward.
But I'm saying, to me, the redemption of that comes with, unfortunately, with a different character, but with the Emily Blunt character, who is a fully formed, like, she has her own backstory, her own struggles, her own dynamic with the kid, like all of that. She's way more fleshed out, because I feel like if you didn't have that character in there, this would feel like it's another, again, like I said, the dead wife scenario where it's literally just, oh, we just have women in this cast to like generate emotional investment and the like catharsis for the male characters, and that's that. But she, prevents it from doing that essentially. So, anything else you want to say before we get to the absolutely like brilliant banger ending of this movie?
No, we pretty much covered everything I wanted to talk about.
So, Kid Blue shows up, like we said, there's a shootout outside of the cornfield, and then things escalate. Bruce Willis is coming after them. They flip the car. There's all of that stuff. Kid gets shot through the cheek, which we heard earlier. Like, oh, there's all rumors his mom was killed in front of him, and he has a synthetic jaw. Like, all these things are kind of starting to line up. But yeah, and JGL's in pursuit after having killed Kid Blue, so he's a little bit behind. Catches up to him, and he's not going to be able to reach Bruce Willis in time.
They play up the one thing that they talk about earlier, is that when they're in the same spot together, just for a brief little bit, JGL can see, like,
what's gonna
happen that Bruce Willis already knows has happened. So you get that shot of like him escaping, Sid getting on the train all alone with the bloody cheek and all that.
Yeah.
And it's like once they meet in that parallel, that time, he's realizes like, okay, yeah, like this will, no matter what I do right here, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to jump in front of him? What do we do? He won't shoot me.
Like, this is I can't get to him. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
We will run in this loop forever and ever.
Right.
And he's like, so I saw it all in that moment, and you're like, oh my God, all of this is coalescing. But I'm like, it's still, first time watching it, I'm like, but what's the out, dude? Like, what do we do? And he's just like, I saw everything, and it was a circle. So I changed it. And when he flips that gun on himself, I remember just like, the brilliance of it hit me all at once, where I was just like, dude, that is
the solution everyone knows the answer to when they start the movie that they don't know is the answer when they start the movie.
It's so...
He already knew that the minute he made this movie, was like, this is the only way to get out of this. It's been the only way to get out of this. So, my old future self can't kill younger self. Younger self can hunt older self down all day long. But if younger self gets taken out, older self dies as well. What's the easiest way to do it? Take yourself out of the equation.
And we've seen so many self-sacrifice moments in movies.
Right.
For time immemorial. But again, what this motherfucker does best is he takes these well-worn tropes, these things we know and are just like, we know are rock solid foundation, and his attitude with all of this, you can take it into Star Wars as well, is like, okay, I've seen that shit. It works. We've done it well for a long period of time. So what can I add to it?
Right.
Like, literally, what can I do that is different? What have I always wanted to see as a riff on this type of thing? And his brain just seems to kind of approach everything in like, genre is great. I love tropes. But how do we move beyond, oh, I want to pay homage to this thing, and we start setting some new rules, possibly.
Right.
Doing something new with it.
Because, he easily could have just shot his own hand off and solved the whole problem right there.
Sure.
But he doesn't. He just takes his entire self out of it.
Right.
The hand he's holding to shoot the gun, if he just, boom. We see that does work. We watched it in the past.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to believe that with the amount of money he saved up, he couldn't get a great prosthetic. And the future's coming soon. He could get a prosthetic hand, no problem.
Yeah.
But it also leads you to believe that, like, if that moment, like, if he shoots his hand off, like, where are we going to go? Like, they're still both there.
I got to be honest.
Both handless.
If this movie ended with JGL shooting his hand off and that being, and like Bruce Willis, the hand disappears, the gun drops, and the day is saved or whatever, this movie's like an 8 Okay, instead of a 10. I'm just being honest.
What if in his
it just
own
would kind of
self-
take all the piss out of it.
It would, but what if, like, you know, I got it. Here's how I do it. You do that. No. You do that.
Let me rewrite.
No. Here you go. Yeah. You do that, right? And you have that, like, when that happens, the gun drops, the gun still goes off, still kills her, and the whole thing is always going to happen. And in that moment, I realized, no matter what I do, if I don't take myself out completely, we're going to be in this loop. Because it does.
So you just want Emily Blunt to be dead?
No. I'm saying, like, that would put some predestination into it, which we've talked about, like, anything's possible. But it also would add the argument of, like, even if I do this, I don't kill myself. Even if I remove, stop it right now, at this point in time, always, if she dies, everything will happen. Doesn't matter how. Doesn't matter if he shoots her outright. Doesn't matter if I try to wing myself and the gun still goes off and kills her. The only outcome I have that I can see is if I kill myself. Like, that's how I would do it. It would be like another Flash dream thing that he sees, because we've played with that before. We'll end with that, and in that moment I realized there's nothing I could do but kill myself. I can't, like, try and burn my hand, or, like, shoot it off, or, shoot my leg, or...
You get a montage of him, all the different attempts.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the ending of Doctor Strange.
Dormammu, I've come here. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's what it is. Because it's an infinite loop. Time is a flat circle. It's fine. But no, yeah, the ending how it is perfect. This movie's a fucking 10/10. It's like a fucking classic.
It's one of those that, takes it from, like, oh shit, this was a really good, entertaining movie, and then has such a just perfect button of an ending that you're just like, oh, that was fucking great. Like, who leaves the theater going like, oh, okay, Looper. You leave going like, fucking hey, man.
Yeah.
Like that.
I got to go right back in and see it on another loop.
Absolutely, man.
I mean, anybody going to movies now that expects that the hero is going to walk out with them, you just need to just abandon all hope. Any good person that you like in a movie, just assume they're not going to make it out. And then if they do, it's great. And if they don't, you're like, you know what? He's a hero. It's a hero's tale. Heroes don't always stick around. It happens. It's just The Searchers. It's just the end of the movie, The Searchers.
We're talking about cinema here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I'm not allowed to like indies, but I can like westerns. Okay.
Okay.
John Ford did it best.
I will allow you that. Okay. So that was the kickoff of 2x2. Again, Narc. Enjoyed going back to it. Don't need to revisit it again, but definitely going to be checking out some more some unseen Jason Patrics very soon. Looper has only grown in my estimation every time I rewatch it. I agree with, I would love to hear from people. You can email thearkofe@gmail.com.
Yes.
Name me a sci-fi movie post 2012, original sci-fi film that tops this for you. That is not, again, I leave the caveat, that is not a Benson and Moorhead movie, because The Endless, Synchronic.
Do we get a third Daniel Jones sci-fi movie after Mute?
Duncan Jones.
I don't know why I said Daniel Jones.
We have not. No, he made Warcraft.
Right.
Before Mute. And
nothing since then.
I don't believe so.
Okay. He'd be the only guy I'd really be interested to see what he did with that, so to speak. There's been plenty of, like, time.
You heard of this fella Francis Ford Coppola?
That's the Apocalypse Now guy, right?
I think so.
Yeah. What about him?
He's finally cashing in all the Vineyard money. And he's like self-financed. He's doing it one last time. He's like, I'm making my great sci-fi opus that people will puzzle over for the next, he's like, this is my crowning achievement, final film, my final statement as an artist.
But somebody's still going to come out and be like, Kubrick did it better.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, that just occurred to me. I was like, new original sci-fi that's coming out.
I did see somebody say, like, he's going to self-finance. He doesn't give a shit.
Oh, no, he's literally, like, I think is he sold off most of the
$170
stakes of the vineyard and like all the profits he's been like funneling into this. But yeah, no, it's going to be like a $200 million sci-fi epic. Remains to be seen. I look forward to the next Rian Johnson feature, which will be on Netflix later this year. It's called Knives Out 2. I gotta be honest, this is one of those cases. Anytime a director immediately hops into the sequel of their work, even if it's something I loved, and they don't do something in between, I'm always a little wary.
Yeah. See
Hostel Part 2, for instance. Not that Eli
Halloween
Roth
kills.
Yeah.
For you, I love it.
I know you love it. To each their own. Okay. Any final thoughts on our 2x2?
We got Oscars coming up, and then do an Oscars thing, and we'll pick the next one then, I'm sure. Come up with our own categories as well as our predicts.
And also tease that we'll have the premiere of a very special new miniseries that's going to be a little extra interactive thing between our Patreon and our main feed, but we'll talk more about that when we get there.
Indeed.
All right. Well, Gavin?
Yeah, Noah?
These listeners, they open their podcast apps. They decided to download this episode. They knew what they were getting into. I say,
let them listen.